Bringing home my son who had left school early due to a fever, I was surprised to find my husband, Edgar, and my sister, Anna, at home, although they were supposed to be at a funeral. As I quietly approached the bedroom at the far end of the house, I heard voices coming from inside. Voices of a man and a woman. I recognized both of them. "You're being so capricious, calling me out of the blue has a lot of choices. But suddenly I had some free time. It's okay, thanks to that, I could enter this house openly." It was undoubtedly Edgar and then Anna in the bedroom. "Don't rush me, divorce isn't that simple. That's why I'm waiting. But please, make it quick." "All right." I felt the blood drain from my face. What did they just say? Divorce? Anna moving in here? What does that mean? "Help! The aunt is being attacked." Michael, trying not to alert the villains, quietly took out his kid's smartphone, activated the camera, and recorded a video of the two. The shocking video received by relatives left everyone astounded. My name is Hannah. I'm 32. I'm a freelance writer. I used to work for a company, but I went freelance after getting married and having a child. I met Edgar through a friend's introduction during college. We were part of a group that hung out together, and eventually, a few couples formed, including us. After graduating from college and getting accustomed to our jobs, the conversation of marriage came up naturally between us, and everything progressed smoothly. Despite a generally smooth-sailing life, there was one troubling issue. My sister, Anna. Anna, 3 years my senior and the same age as Edgar, had been divorced twice. Both times due to her infidelity. Anna has been willful and spoiled since childhood. Whenever our parents tried to discipline her, she would cry for hours on end to get her way. Perhaps because of this, I grew up to be a rather subdued child. Learning early on what was acceptable behavior was not, simply by observing my sister's tantrums. Anna's first marriage was at 18, right after graduating when she got pregnant by her then boyfriend. They got married, and she gave birth. The marriage ended in divorce when Anna's affair with a cafe waiter she frequented was discovered. The relationship with the affair partner did not last, and Anna ended up living aimlessly at our parents' house, not working and depending on them for support. During this time, she had relationships with several men, leading to her second marriage with the father of another child. However, this second marriage also did not last due to Anna's infidelity. Now, she's remarried for the third time, and it seems to be stable. Anna's behavior has caused endless stress and worry for me and our parents. For the sake of our family's peace, I hope she stays calm. After giving birth, I quit my job to become a freelance writer, focusing on raising my child. It's actually good. Working from home doesn't change much from being at home. His workplace is a top-tier company, considered elite. At company gatherings, such as anniversary parties, I've had the chance to speak with other wives, who were surprised that I'm not a stay-at-home wife. They support her husbands by managing the home. Despite having no complaints about our income. People often asked why I continued to work. Edgar probably wished deep down that I would become a full-time homemaker to support him fully. It hurt a bit. Thinking he appreciated my work. But in truth, he has acknowledged my career and allowed me to continue working. I've decided to keep any hurt feelings to myself and carry on as a normal couple. Dredging up such matters won't do any good. It's a minor issue. Something many couples face. I take pride in my work. And that pride keeps me going. That's enough for me. With these mixed feelings, I've been busy with childcare. Michael is growing up healthy and happy. Never seriously ill, always full of energy. Michael sure is energetic. It must be tough for you, Hannah, dealing with him every day. Really, no amount of time or energy seems enough. When I responded that way, Edgar laughed, always seeming like he had something more to say but never did. Probably what Edgar wanted to say was, "Then you should just quit your job." He wouldn't say it out loud, but his eyes did. Instead, he would say something like, "Well, we just have to adjust things as we go." Make sure you're not pushing yourself too hard, Hannah. He never once mentioned taking a more active role in parenting. Maybe his job is too demanding for that kind of flexibility, but I wished he would get more involved in raising Michael. We had a fight just once, shortly after Michael was born. Over the unaccustomed childcare, the multiple nighttime feedings, and diaper changes. I was exhausted from the lack of sleep. So, I asked Edgar, "Hey, could you possibly take a short paternity leave?" Edgar's company had a comprehensive maternity and paternity leave policy. After all, it's a major company leading the way in implementing such systems. But Edgar's response was, "You know what happens if I actually take it, right? It would affect my career advancement. That's why everyone's wife focuses on childcare." "So you're saying I should quit my job?" I retorted. Edgar looked pained. "I didn't say that. But if you're saying childcare is too hard, we need to figure something out. How about a babysitter?" Indeed, Edgar's salary could cover it. But what I wanted was for him to want to share the experience of raising our child together. "That's not what I'm talking about. Why can't you understand?" I cried out, but Edgar never really got it. "Postpartum, the hormonal balance gets all out of whack. You'll be fine. It'll settle down eventually," Edgar concluded, effectively dismissing the issue. Since then, I've decided not to touch on that topic again. There are things even couples can't see eye to eye on, I guess. Despite this misunderstanding, we've had no major conflicts since then. Edgar tacitly allowed me to work as long as it didn't affect our home life, and I didn't hesitate to outsource our household and childcare when necessary. My colleagues' wives secure their personal time and focus on self-improvement that way. You should do more of the same. I've come to accept this viewpoint, using what services I can to continue doing the work I love. That must be all right. As Michael grew, he became more mischievous, more active, and curious than other children. It's fun to watch, but sometimes he goes too far. Michael's favorite thing is heroes. "When I grow up, I'm gonna be a hero," he declares, getting excited every week watching his favorite shows, striking poses, and play fighting. That's fine. But then this happened. We were at the zoo, there was someone who was drunk causing a scene. Michael, believe it or not, decided to confront him. "You villain, face me!" he shouted, stepping forward and trying to transform with a hero pose. Edgar quickly scooped Michael up and we left the scene before the security arrived, but it was a close call. We sternly taught Michael that what he did was dangerous, though it seemed he didn't fully understand because of his youth. Yet, he must have been thinking about it because he asked later, "Mom, is it wrong to fight villains?" It seemed Michael believed he could defeat the drunk and be a hero. "You're still small and not a hero yet, right?" "Yeah." "So, you can't beat a villain, right?" "Dad and I don't want you to get hurt." Michael thought about it, then asked, "What should I do if there's a villain?" It seems he felt villains must be dealt with, no matter what. After thinking about what would be best to tell him, I said, "If you see a villain, tell a police officer." "A police officer?" "Yes, that's the best thing to do." Michael pondered this. "How do I tell a police officer?" "Just call out for one, I guess." "But what if there's no police officer nearby?" He really thinks things through, even at his age. "Well, you have your kid's smartphone, right?" Nowadays, we think it's necessary for children to have a way to contact a few specific people. The phone is set up to call me, Edgar, and my father-in-law. Pressing a button connects him to one of us. And he's also linked to us via social media. It was Edgar and I, along with his parents. Also, his sister and her husband, who live nearby and adore Michael, and their kids are part of our circle. My parents aren't tech-savvy at all, so we're only connected with Edgar's family in this way. When Michael posts photos or videos he's taken on this social media, they respond with hearts, stars, and comments. So, make phone calls or send photos and videos. Then someone will tell the police for you. I see. Michael was satisfied with this solution, so I quickly notified our group on social media about it. Everyone sent OK stamps, and Michael was thrilled. This should keep him from doing anything too risky. That was my only worry. Until then, I had believed keeping my distance from my troublesome sister was the best approach. Then one day, we got news that Edgar's great-uncle had passed away. It was his grandfather's brother, who had been living in a facility and died of old age, nearly at 100. I had only met him once when Edgar and I got married and hardly remembered his face. Unfortunately, I had work scheduled on the day of the funeral. This is a problem. I really need to go to this interview, Edgar offered. We weren't that close, and I can go to the funeral alone. It might be too much for Michael anyway. That might be best. I'm sorry, but could you? So it was decided Edgar would attend alone. His father agreed it was fine. I'll have to help out, so I'm leaving early in the morning, even though it's just the wake today. I have work in the morning, so Michael will be in daycare. I'll be back by evening. Edgar understood and left early. I saw him off and took Michael to daycare. We used to have a sitter come to the house, but I thought it was time for him to start interacting with peers. I've recently been using temporary daycare. My work ends in the morning, and I had plans to see a colleague's performance in the afternoon. But then, the daycare called suddenly. Michael had developed a fever. I apologized, canceled my plans, and went to pick him up. When I arrived, he seemed better than I expected but definitely had a flushed face. They can't keep children suspected of having an infectious disease. Let's take it easy at home today. Arriving home, I noticed something odd. A sinking feeling hit me. Michael, I know you're not feeling well, but could you wait here for a moment? I asked him to sit in the dining area near the entrance and started to search the house. Approaching the bedroom at the back, I heard voices. A man and a woman. I recognized both. You're being so capricious, summoning me out of the blue. Couldn't help it. Suddenly I got some free time. But it's fine, thanks to that, I could enter this house openly. It was undoubtedly Edgar and my sister in the bedroom. I can't wait to live here openly. My sister blurted out, unaware I was listening. Don't rush me, divorce isn't that simple. Edgar cautioned. That's why I'm waiting. But make it quick, okay? Got it. I felt my body temperature drop. What did they just say? Divorce? My sister moving in here? What does that mean? My sister, Anna, has been divorced twice, but now she's married to a wealthy company president. The child from her first marriage was taken by her ex-husband's side, as Anna's mother-in-law insisted that Anna couldn't possibly raise the child. Anna nonchalantly agreed, saying that having a child would interfere with her next romance and marriage. He's still hung up on me, believing I'll come back to him someday. Anna had said, and that was probably true. Such things only worked out for her because she's a beautiful and attractive woman. Something undeniable. Her whims always prevailed since childhood because she was doll-like and cute. Anna took after our handsome father, while I resembled our very ordinary mother. Anna, with her father's charm, was always the center of attention, while I, looking ordinary like our mother, never stood out much. Unlike Anna, I haven't led a dramatic life and continue to live ordinarily. So when I heard about her doings, I could only look at her with a cold eye, just like when we were kids. The year after Anna's second marriage and childbirth, I also got married and was blessed with Michael. We met normally, dated normally, and had a normal marriage. I was content and happy. While I was cherishing this ordinary happiness, Anna, due to infidelity again, was getting divorced for the second time. Finally, a man worthy of me has appeared. The previous two were just appetizers. Now it's time for the main course, she would say so rudely. Financially secure, Anna stopped causing troubles. So, it was unbelievable that she would go after my husband, Edgar, even if he was an elite. I was confused. Not knowing what to do, I suddenly felt nauseous. Without alerting them, I quietly left the scene and silently entered the bathroom to vomit. Though my stomach should have been empty, an indescribable substance kept coming up. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. Since I didn't return for a while, Michael went looking for me and ended up near the bedroom. I was holed up in the bathroom, unaware of each other. Approaching the bedroom, Michael sensed something. Probably feeling adventurous. He quietly opened the door like I did. Instead of conversation, she heard moaning. Shocked, Michael recognized the person in distress as his aunt, whom he had met a few times. Someone was on top of his aunt, doing something bad.
Help! Aunt is being attacked!
Michael thought he had to defeat the villain. Remembering what to do in such situations, he quietly took out her kid's smartphone, activated the camera, and recorded the scene. Michael's smartphone camera had an infrared feature. In the dark, it clearly captured the pained expression on his aunt's face and the villain writhing on top of her. Michael quietly closed the door, went back to the safety of the dining room, and hurriedly sent the video to our social media group.
Aunt is being attacked by a villain, tell the police.
From Michael's action, the situation took an unexpected turn. After emptying my stomach, I was finally able to move. As a mother, it was shameful, but until then, I hadn't thought of Michael. I was just feeling sick and couldn't stop vomiting.
Michael!
Once the physical urge subsided, I rushed back to the dining room. Michael was sitting there, happily as before.
Michael, just stay quiet a little longer, okay? Okay.
Relieved to see Michael safe, I prepared to confront my husband and sister. On my way back from the bathroom to the dining room, I devised a plan. First, to lock those two in the bedroom. I took 2 chairs from the dining room and placed them in front of the bedroom. Lined up, the chairs matched the corridor's width, blocking the outward opening door. Then, I moved a bit away and called Edgar's phone. His belongings weren't in the entrance or dining room, probably inside the bedroom. As expected, the ringtone came from inside.
Damn, who is it at this time?
After hearing that, Edgar answered the call.
What's up?
It's a bit hard to talk right now, Edgar said, as casual as ever. Perhaps I had been deceived by him in the same way until now.
Sorry, Michael developed a fever. I had to pick him up from daycare and am on my way home, so I thought I'd let you know.
What?
Is Michael okay? It's nothing serious, but nowadays, even a slight fever means being sent home from daycare. I'm about to leave the daycare now.
After finishing the necessary calls, I hung up my smartphone and returned to the bedroom door. Inside, I could hear Edgar hurriedly telling my sister that I was coming back and getting ready to leave.
What's going on? The door won't open.
Edgar said in a panicked voice, trying to leave the room.
What's wrong? I don't know, the door just won't open.
Edgar struggled against the door, but the chairs I placed were blocking it from opening.
What's happening? I don't know.
They kept pushing against the door, but of course, it wouldn't budge.
We need to hurry before Hannah comes back.
Was it going to be a problem if I came back?
What?
Edgar exclaimed in surprise when he heard my voice. Ignoring Edgar's reaction, I made a call on my smartphone loud enough for both of them to hear. Hello, it's me.
Actually, I found my husband and my sister together in our bedroom.
I lightly explained the situation.
Hey, who are you calling?
Edgar pounded on the door, but I didn't answer. All right.
About an hour, right?
I'll wait.
Hey, who did you call?
The pounding continued, but I ignored it and returned to the dining room. I was worried about Michael. The noise from the bedroom door continued, but I decided not to respond until the person I was waiting for arrived.
Michael, I'm sorry. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. And, Mom, I told the police.
What?
I was taken aback by Michael's explanation.
Michael, did you see inside the bedroom?
Yeah, I was looking for Mom. What a thing for a child to witness. I regretted my actions. What should I do?
And then, because there was a villain, I told everyone to tell the police. Everyone?
Like Grandpa. Michael showed me the video he sent. Indeed, it looked like my sister was being attacked. But thankfully, Edgar's face wasn't visible. I thanked God for that small mercy. How hurt Michael would be if he knew his father was the villain. I calmed myself and started to put things in order. The call I made in front of Edgar and my sister was to my parents. I had wanted to call Edgar's parents too, but they were at a great-uncle's wake today. I couldn't possibly call there. So I planned to do it later. And yet, Michael had sent such a video to my father-in-law. As I was pondering what to do, the doorbell rang.
Hannah, are you there? What's going on? Is Michael okay?
My father-in-law was ringing the doorbell repeatedly. I had no choice but to face the situation. I went to open the door. And there were my in-laws, my sister-in-law and her husband, and other relatives.
Aren't you supposed to be at the great-uncle's wake? That's not important right now.
My father-in-law exclaimed, his face turning red.
We've explained the situation, and they've postponed the wake. The wake is postponed. Let's go inside.
My brother-in-law said, and all the relatives poured into our house. My father-in-law rushed to Michael, sitting in the dining room, and hugged him. My mother-in-law was tearful. And my sister-in-law and the relatives seemed relieved.
What exactly is happening? Aunt, that's your sister, right?
Michael seems to have a fever.
Let's take him to her room.
I mumbled, noticing Michael's condition. My sister-in-law noticed Michael was feverish and took him to the children's room.
Actually, I still don't quite understand the situation myself,
I said, explaining everything that had happened that morning to everyone.
And now, I have locked Edgar and my sister in the bedroom. Understood.
My mother-in-law said, staying with me in the dining room while everyone else headed to the bedroom. Soon after, my father-in-law's yelling could be heard. My father-in-law and the relatives confronted them, and many things came to light. At first, the two of them played dumb, but after my father-in-law showed them the video Michael sent, Edgar's shoulders slumped, and he started to tell everything. According to him, he began an affair with my sister while I was pregnant with Michael. A typical story of husbands straying during their wife's pregnancy. But the fact that the affair was with his wife's sister, and she was Mary, was particularly shameful. When I announced my pregnancy, my sister and her husband had come to congratulate us. That's when my sister asked Edgar for his contact information. As they started communicating, they grew closer. My sister has always been the type to attract men. Her first husband even tried to reconcile several times after their divorce. The second husband, angered by the affair, probably thought she would come back to him since she had no money. Unfortunately, her third husband had the means, forcing him to give up on her. Edgar, too, must have been ensnared by my sister's devilish charm. I never thought my sister would go after Edgar because her current husband is a president of a company. I thought Edgar, despite being an elite, wouldn't match up to a president. But my sister seduced Edgar. The reason was,
I couldn't stand Hannah marrying an elite.
Overheard by my parents who arrived later, my sister said this with a sulk.
Hannah should have lived a plain life, but here she is, living in a nice house, doing the job she loves. I couldn't stand it.
My sister, having ensnared Edgar, whispered to him,
Hey, why don't we get a divorce and be together?
I've fallen for you, Edgar. Edgar, who regretted getting involved with my sister to some extent, was gradually swayed by her words. Especially when she said, If it were me, I wouldn't work.
I'd just stay home, waiting for Edgar. Hannah loves her job more than she loves you.
Edgar, who deep down wanted me to quit my job, started to seriously consider divorce. I had no clue. Edgar had always been a good husband and father at home.
All right, let's get a divorce. You can remarry or whatever you want. But you'll have to pay what's due.
I confronted them with a divorce, and Edgar started to panic.
No, I don't want a divorce.
What?
I thought you wanted to marry my sister.
Isn't that what you wished for?
It's not like that,
Edgar said, as if he had finally come to his senses.
The thing with Anna was like a fantasy, a man's romance.
What a ridiculous excuse. I don't care about that. We're getting a divorce anyway.
Hannah, I'm sorry. I'll make sure Edgar pays for his actions,
my father-in-law said, looking defeated. Despite having such wonderful in-laws, their son had done something unimaginable. After all, he had been unfaithful with my sister for over 5 years. I wasn't going to let this go easily.
And my sister will have to pay for the sin too. What?
Of course, I said, and my sister laughed.
Fine, do whatever you want,
my sister said, leaving everyone speechless.
It didn't matter to me either way. As long as you and Edgar got divorced, that was all I wanted.
Why?
I told you, I couldn't stand you being happy. If you were miserable, that was enough for me. How dare you, Hannah, act so high and mighty?
My sister said this boldly, without a hint of remorse.
You think he will just accept it like that?
Of course.
He's crazy about me. If it's something money can solve, he'll pay.
No, he won't pay, came a sudden voice. It was my sister's husband. In fact, my parents had contacted him.
I've heard everything you did. I've had enough. What are you talking about? You can't possibly leave me. I can't live with someone who would go after her brother-in-law just to make her sister miserable,
he replied, finally showing a change in Anna's expression.
Let's discuss the rest through lawyers. I don't want to see your face anymore. Wait, just a minute.
I'm sorry, Hannah. I must take my leave today. We'll talk again later, he said, turning to leave as Anna hurled words at his back.
Whatever, you're just a rich old man. Fine, I'll divorce you and marry Edgar.
He left without looking back. His departure was marked by a profound silence from everyone present. I divorced Edgar. And, of course, Anna also parted ways with her husband.
Well, it's fine. Edgar is still young and an elite. My life won't change,
Anna boasted, disregarding the 15-year age gap between her and her now ex-husband, who had indulged her until he could no longer forgive her actions. My parents declared they would cut ties with Anna, who seemed unfazed, only envisioning a bright future as the wife of an elite. Edgar might have called his affair with Anna a romance, but to Anna, Edgar was her romance. However, that romance crumbled in the face of reality. Edgar was demoted. Believing she was marrying back into the elite, Anna married Edgar as soon as the divorce prohibition period ended, but her plans went awry. Edgar, having started to badmouth me to his colleagues, faced the repercussions of his deeds becoming public knowledge at the company. He had been spreading rumors about me being a bad wife. No wonder I felt such a backlash at gatherings. But all of that was a lie. He had been unfaithful with my sister and tried to drive me out. Once the company found out, my colleagues started looking at me differently. Moreover, it was discovered that Edgar often requested time off from work, citing childcare as the reason. Edgar's company is top-notch. They genuinely offer paternity leave for men. Additionally, it was revealed he frequently requested leave under the pretext of childcare, despite claiming such policies were mere formalities. The truth was exposed when Anna's ex-husband, who had connections to Edgar's company, disclosed everything. Edgar was transferred to a subsidiary in a remote location. With their plans in ruins, they're now facing the consequences. The house we lived in became mine through property division. And I received child support for Michael, paid by Edgar, seemingly from his savings. Edgar is an elite, after all. He can easily recoup that money. Believing Edgar, the elite, could easily recover the financial loss, Anna and Edgar were left with nothing but debt. Anna's attempts to find a new man were thwarted as their notoriety spread, leaving them isolated and burdened with debt repayment. For the first time, Anna had to work. Having lived off others and done as she pleased, she now faced the consequences of her actions. I sold the house and moved back to my parents' home. While my career is going well, I worry about Michael, who witnessed such distressing events. With support from my parents, we're ensuring she doesn't carry emotional scars. Initially, Michael wondered about Edgar's absence but soon adapted. Since her earliest memories, Edgar's presence had dwindled due to his busy excuse.
Dad is fighting for justice at work,
Michael believes. Someday, he might learn the truth. But with the support of both my and Edgar's parents, we'll raise him surrounded by love.
When I grow up, I'll protect you, Mom. Just wait,
Michael asserts, aspiring to be a hero. For now, he's my little hero in training. Sure to grow into a strong and kind adult. Believing in that future, I continue forward, seeing it as my duty.
You're not cut out to be a manager, Felix. Not even for this luxury condo,
Sana, the mistress, declared triumphantly beside her husband. If you get it, will you please leave Felix's luxury condo? You have no right to live here, it's his home after all. Wait, Felix's luxury condo? I couldn't help but burst into laughter when I heard it again. What's so funny all of a sudden? Oh, sorry. Fine, you can have him if you're okay with such a husband. And since we're divorcing over your affair, I'll definitely be seeking alimony.
Sure, whatever you say.
She seemed confident, but she must be making a big mistake. Oh well. Thinking this, I left the house and immediately contacted someone. But after all this, I'll never forgive you too. Sana was like a friend and a sister to me. It's unfortunate for her, dreaming of securing both the luxury condo and my husband, but I've decided to present her with an interesting scenario. My name is Anna Turner, 32 years old. I live with my husband Felix, in the penthouse of a luxury condo. My parents made their fortune at a young age, owning multiple lands and properties, and now they've retired, leaving the real estate business to me. So, I spend most of my time working from home on my computer. Felix owns a cafe, operating out of one of my properties. Meeting Felix, the cafe owner, was nothing short of miraculous. I've always been introverted, not great at socializing. It made it hard to make friends during my school days. My hobbies are reading, cooking, and gardening, so I rarely go out, except to catch a movie or do a little shopping. Felix and I met when he wanted to rent one of my properties for his cafe. We hit it off over our shared interest in food, sharing stories about ourselves. Felix, being in the service industry, was a great talker and listener. It was new to me since I'd never had someone approach me so casually before. He seemed interested in me, and on his days off, we started going out for meals together. And just like that, our relationship blossomed. Eventually, Felix proposed, and we got married. I was surprised that someone like me could actually get married. My parents were overjoyed about my marriage. As a wedding gift, they bought us the penthouse of a luxury condo where Felix and I began our life together. However, about 3 years into the marriage, Felix started to belittle me. Must be nice, huh? Staying at home every day, playing games on the computer. What? I've told you, I'm working from home. I'm not playing around. And you know I'm running cooking classes, right? Those cooking classes aren't a real job. It's just volunteer work, isn't it? Plus, the food you make isn't even good. Ah, I wish you'd earn some money too and give me a break. Running a business is tough, he said before heading off to work. Lately, I've been trying not to worry about Felix's moodiness, thinking it's because his cafe isn't doing well. I run a cooking class once a week as a way to change things up, teaching easy-to-make recipes. That's where I met Sana, a student in her 20s, and we hit it off.
Ah, I wish I could cook like you, Anna. They say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, right? That's true. Don't worry, I have plenty of recipes to share. The key to making delicious food is to enjoy cooking it yourself.
Sana, just starting out in her career, wanted to improve her cooking skills to move away from a life of store-bought meals. Despite her busy schedule, she was eager to learn new things, and I wanted to teach her as much as I could. "Hey, Anna. I want to get better at cooking," Sana said with unusual seriousness. That's when I had an idea.
Of course, I'll teach you everything I know. How about coming over to my place next time for a cooking practice session?
To your place? Are you sure?
Absolutely. You've been such a great listener even after the classes, so it's special.
Sana was thrilled at the offer of private lessons. It felt like I had gained a younger sister. Later, I invited Sana to our penthouse.
Thank you for having me today. Welcome. Let's take our time and enjoy cooking today. Yes. Living in the penthouse of a luxury condo is amazing. What does your husband do?
My parents bought this condo as a wedding gift. My husband runs a cafe.
Wow, your husband is a cafe owner? That means you get to enjoy delicious coffee and meals, right? Ah, that sounds like happiness.
Well, thank you, I said as Sana and I were chatting on the couch before cooking when Felix came out of the bedroom. Good morning. Anna, could I get a coffee? And who's this? Oh, let me introduce you. This is Sana Hamilton. She's been attending my cooking classes. Sana, this is my husband Felix. As usual, I made coffee and introduced Sana to Felix.
Nice to meet you. I'm here today to learn cooking from Anna.
That's great. It's nice to see someone so young putting in the effort. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me too. I'm almost as good at cooking as Anna is.
Thank you. And wow, Felix, you're really cool. I'm jealous of Anna.
Oh, thank you. Felix seemed pleased to be called cool by a younger girl, his face lighting up with a smile. I could see why. Sana is cute, even from a woman's perspective. But did he have to be that visibly smitten? I wondered if he really had to go to work today.
Oh right. I need to get going early today for the prep work.
Oh, is that so? I wish we could have talked more. Then come to our cafe next time. I'll make sure to treat you well since you're a friend of Anna's.
Really? I'll definitely visit then.
Looking forward to it. After seeing Felix off, Sana and I got started on cooking. Sana said she had time today, so we decided to make several easy dishes. As we cooked, Sana began to ask more about Felix. But Felix is really cool, isn't he? It's almost miraculous how you met someone like him. Truly. He's too good for me.
Ah, I wish I could end up with someone as amazing as Felix. Marrying a handsome cafe owner like him is just too enviable.
Sana's words stirred a bit of unease in me. While I don't think she meant any harm, her remarks made me feel a little insecure. The thought that she might be getting close to Felix to take him away crossed my mind, but I tried not to dwell on it. Focusing on cooking, I taught Sana as best as I could. Sana seemed happy with the dishes we made.
Thank you for today. It was great to be able to make so many different dishes.
I'm glad you think so. If you have any questions, feel free to ask anytime. Yes. Would it be okay if we shared today's dishes with Felix? Oh. You're not taking it home? I have plans tonight, so I'll be eating there. Please let me know what you think after you've eaten it. Got it. Then today, I'll have dinner with my husband and enjoy the dishes Sana and I made together. As the sun was setting, I told Sana to be careful on her way home. Thanks to cooking with Sana, I didn't have to prepare dinner tonight, so I hurried to finish other chores. In between, I also checked my work on the computer. When night fell, Felix came home at his usual time. Welcome back. You must be tired from today. What's for dinner? The cold Felix the First was used to was back, a stark contrast to his behavior when Sana was around. Today, we have dishes that Sana and I made together. I'd really like you to try them since we went through the trouble. Oh. If Sana made it, then I guess I'll give it a try. Although the dishes Sana and I made were simple to prepare, Felix ate them without any complaints today. Lately, he had been complaining about my cooking and often left it uneaten. I always try to balance the nutrition and make the presentation look nice. Even though today's dishes were simple and not particularly fancy or beautifully presented, Felix didn't complain at all. Well, it's rare, but it happens. Still, it was nice to see him eat without any complaints for a change. However, instead of complaints, he decided to make a sarcastic comment. Today's meal is incredibly delicious. So, Sana made this under your guidance, huh? Guess it really depends on who makes it. A young and cute girl's cooking tastes this good. Maybe instead of improving your cooking skills, you should work on your looks. That might make the food taste better, huh? I was utterly dumbfounded and felt a surge of anger, but I managed to keep my cool and silently cleared the dishes after we finished eating. Half a month later, Felix brought someone home unexpectedly. I was surprised by the sudden visitor while I was busy with my computer. What's going on? It was Sana. Sana happened to visit our cafe today. She said she wanted to share her thoughts on the dishes from the other day, so I brought her over.
Anna, I'm sorry for the surprise.
Oh, it's fine. I was just surprised because I didn't expect Sana to come over. I haven't prepared anything for dinner.
Don't worry, I'll make something. As a thank you for last time, I'll cook today.
But Felix, you must be tired, right? I can cook.
Wow, Felix, really? Thank you so much. I'm so happy.
Look forward to it and wait up. Yes. Sana excitedly interrupted my words. While I was thinking, just wait a minute. I stopped working on my computer since Sana was here and decided to listen to her while Felix was cooking. She happened to have some free time today and went to Felix's cafe. She had been there a few times before, but it was always fully booked, so she hardly had a chance to talk. Today, she went just before closing time and finally got to talk to him, but since there wasn't much time, Felix invited her over to our house. So that's what happened. Well, take your time and enjoy your stay today.
Thank you, Anna.
And perhaps that became a catalyst. Felix and Sana's relationship rapidly improved. Sana started to frequently visit our house, often returning with Felix. She's been coming over a lot lately, almost like it's her own home. Well, it's not like it's interfering with my work, so it's fine. However, as Sana started coming over more often, it seemed like my presence at home started to bother them, and Felix and Sana began to complain to me. Felix is right, Anna. You're always at home. What are you doing all day? I think I've told you before, but I'm working from home. Huh? Just fiddling with the computer and you call that work? You're probably just playing games, right? This is the problem with nerds. Anna, you're always at home playing games? Other than your cooking class, you're just cooped up here. I feel sorry for Felix working so hard. That's because this is. I felt a bit sad and frustrated by his lack of understanding towards my work. Compared to you, Sana is bright, kind, and cute, the complete opposite of a nerd like Anna.
That's not true. But if it were me, I'd want to reduce Felix's burden even more and try my best. Sana, saying that makes you an angel. Anna, you should really take a page out of Sana's book.
Felix and Sana freely expressed their disdain for me with their comments. But Sana is still a student from my cooking class. Having grown close to Sana, who is much younger, I tried to act maturely and not let it bother me. As a child, being slightly good at studies meant I was often bullied and looked down upon with many sarcastic comments thrown my way. Yeah, I'll try not to let it get to me. Sana was a student from my cooking class who approached me in a friendly manner and became my friend. With that thought, I decided to hide my mixed feelings. However, Felix started coming home from work later and later. Given it's a cafe with fixed closing hours, it's unusual for him to be late so many days in a row if the shop is just busy. I decided to ask Felix about it before he went to work today. Felix, you've been coming home late recently. Is something going on? You haven't been calling, and I'm worried. I've been working on a new menu item. That's why I'm late. Is that all? Stop nagging. That's all it is. If you keep asking, that's overstepping. Overstepping? I didn't mean to. Then don't ask anything. You really don't know how to consider others' feelings. Felix shouted and stormed out of the house, slamming the front door behind him. Just asking warranted no need for him to raise his voice like that. I was shocked and felt down because Felix never used to be so harsh. I wonder when things changed so much. Despite my surprise at Felix's transformation, I calmed myself down and focused on what I could do. Then, one day, I'm home.
Anna's back.
Hey, you're late coming back. When I returned home from the cooking class, I found Sana, who had missed the class, and Felix drinking at home. Why? I understand Felix being home if his cafe is closed today. But Sana had messaged me saying she had an urgent matter and couldn't attend the class. Why then is she here, drinking with Felix? My thoughts were spinning, and I felt uneasy. Hey, Anna. Don't just stand there, make some snacks to go with the drinks. You can see, right? We're out of snacks. We finished all the snacks we bought while drinking. Anna, please? Felix and Sana, without any guilt, asked me to make snacks. As if they were a couple cozying up to each other, which irked me. Sorry, I'm not feeling well today, so I'll rest in my room. I excused myself and retreated to my bedroom. Behind me, I could hear, damn useless. Followed by, oh, don't say that. It's mean. I wondered why I had to be subjected to such comments, fighting back tears of frustration with my pillow. The next morning, it seemed I had fallen asleep without realizing it. Checking my slightly swollen eyes in the mirror before leaving my room, I saw Felix and Sana cuddling asleep on the couch. What, this can't be happening. Seeing them like that, the word affair popped into my head, but I shook it off, thinking it was bad to jump to conclusions without proof. However, it wasn't a pleasant sight, so I woke them up angrily. Hey, how long are you going to sleep? Get up now. So noisy. It's fine, isn't it?
It's not fine. This is mine and Felix's home. And what's with that sloppy look?
Oh, this? This is from having fun with your husband. What? What does that mean? While you were sleeping in your room, I was having fun with Felix. That means, we're dating. Sana revealed her affair with Felix as if boasting about it. I somewhat suspected it, so I oddly found myself thinking, I knew it. Still, half in denial, I shook Felix awake to confront him. What's with the noise this early? I even took the day off from the cafe. Never mind that, Sana says she's dating you. Is it true?
You're having an affair despite having a wife?
Is that what this is about? Felix answered lazily as if it was a hassle, which only fueled my anger.
What do you mean, is that what this is about? I'm asking you seriously. What's going on?
Come on, it's obvious. I'm dating Sana. We even had fun here. Because being with you is no fun at all. Funny how you are dumped by Felix like this, Anna. You're really finished as a woman. How pathetic. So, I'm planning to remarry Sana. That's why I want you to divorce me. Felix, acting as if he did nothing wrong, admitted to the affair and even demanded a divorce because he wants to remarry Sana. And with a tone of superiority, Sana added, "You're not suited to be the wife of Felix, the cafe owner, or to live in this luxury condo." Nodding in agreement with Sana's words, Felix showed no concern for me. These two don't care about me at all. Not as a wife, not as a friend. Shocked by the affair, I was speechless as Sana went on. So, your husband and this luxury condo are mine. Hurry up and disappear, old hag, she demanded aggressively for me to leave the house. Despite Sanaa's harsh words, which would normally be unimaginable, I somehow managed to stay calm. This luxury condo is Felix's, right? Since we're getting a divorce, you should leave soon, ma'am. Sanaa's claim that Felix owned the luxury condo took me by surprise for a moment. Wait, who owns this luxury condo? I asked again. What? Did the shock make you deaf? That's why I said you need to leave Felix's luxury condo. It's Felix's house, so you have no right to live here. Hearing her repeat herself, I burst into laughter unintentionally. What's so funny all of a sudden? Sorry. Fine, if you're okay with such a husband, he's all yours. Really? You're okay with that? Yes, I'm fine. Of course, I'll be leaving the luxury condo too. But if we're going through with the divorce, I'm going to see a lawyer. Since we're divorcing due to your infidelity, I'll be claiming alimony. Yeah, do whatever you want. So, expect some communication that needs to be addressed, okay? Saying that, I left the luxury condo with just my essential belongings. Surely, Sanaa is making a big mistake. That luxury condo belongs to Felix? I had explained before that it was bought for me by my parents as a wedding gift. Oh well. With that thought, I contacted a certain place. But after what has happened, I'll never forgive you too. You've messed up my life, and you will pay for it. Later on, I visited the luxury condo with Lawyer Miller, who was recommended by a work acquaintance. The visit was, of course, to discuss divorce and alimony with Felix and company. Lawyer Miller had prepared and sent a formal notice, but there had been no action regarding the payment of alimony. So, despite wanting to avoid this meeting, I thought it was necessary and came to the condo. Who is it, so early in the morning? Well, it's almost noon, you know? And you should have received a message from the lawyer, right? Saying we'd be coming over around lunchtime today. Sanaa, still in her sloppy attire, greeted us at the entrance, causing Lawyer Miller to frown. Once we were inside, Felix greeted us with a look of annoyance. Great, using my day off for this. Well, it's not like you'd talk to us otherwise, right? Then let's just pay her the money and get it over with. Felix can easily afford our alimony, right? Ah, yeah, that's true. Watching Felix's reluctant face, I could almost read his mind. Sanaa probably still believes in Felix's lies. It's truly comical how he's trapped by a pretty girl's advances. So, first of all, about the alimony, do you two intend to pay Anna properly? We've been saying we'll pay, haven't you been listening? However, we've sent a formal notice and it's been several months already. God, so annoying. Felix, do something about this. About that, I was planning to explain the situation to my parents and ask them to help with the alimony payment. Felix was trying to persuade Sanaa, saying his parents would understand once he explained. But I had anticipated Felix would say something like this and countered. That won't work. Because I already explained to your parents that you were having an affair. What? Of course, right? We're getting divorced. I had to explain the reason properly. I had called Felix's parents the day I was kicked out of the luxury condo. I had revealed Felix's infidelity to them, and along with a polite apology, they said they had no intention of helping Felix at all. Felix's dad said he was sorry for having such a disgraceful son even though they had adopted him. He told him to take full responsibility for his own actions. Why would you go around doing that? You've ruined the plan. Wait, what do you mean Felix is adopted into your family? What, adopted? Exactly what it means. Felix was adopted into my family, the Turner family. It seems Felix, out of male pride, hadn't told Sanaa he was adopted into my family. I looked at Sanaa with pity. She was panicking, realizing Felix was adopted. Our family only has daughters. When I discussed marrying Felix with my father, he agreed on the condition that Felix would be adopted. Why would he need to be adopted? Well, our family is quite wealthy, you see. From my father's generation, there's been a desire to continue the family name. Of course, if he agreed to be adopted, my father was willing to pass on the assets to Felix. Sana seemed to realize her position was getting precarious. By the way, Sana, you seem to be under the misconception that this luxury condo belongs to Felix. It's in my name.
What? Don't lie. You said your in-laws bought it.
That's where you're misunderstanding. It wasn't Felix's parents but mine who bought it. Sana's expression, wide-mouthed and shocked, was truly laughable. So, selling this luxury condo to pay for the alimony is also out of the question? Ah, well, that's how it is. As Felix stammered with averted eyes, a look of despair began to appear on Sana's face. I nearly burst into laughter, knowing exactly why Felix was struggling to speak clearly. Let me explain something to Sana, who knows nothing.
What?
I own this luxury condo. So, if you wish to continue living here, you're welcome to do so after fully paying the alimony and then paying a fair rent of $30,000. But, of course, that would be impossible for you.
What? $30,000? That's a total rip-off. Unbelievable.
Then, you should check the market rates for this and other luxury condos around here. This one is special, being on the top floor, which is why the rent is higher.
So, Felix has income from running the cafe, so we can pay from that, right, Felix? Wait. That is…
Felix started to panic as Sana brought up his cafe. I'm almost grateful to Sana for digging Felix's grave deeper. Should I call her a genius for this? I mused to myself, laughing inwardly.
The cafe's business is going well, isn't it? You told me so. There were quite a few customers when I went.
Well, Felix's cafe isn't thriving. Sana just happened to visit during a full house. It's hardly making enough to cover the wages of part-timers. What? No way. Indeed, Felix's cafe was mostly running at a loss. It was only manageable because I was covering the deficits from my own assets. Despite being married to me and having plenty of money, Felix focused on the cafe's exterior and interior design, not so much on the quality of ingredients. Though he cared about the coffee beans, everything else was lacking. Initially, I had tried to help the cafe succeed and even cooperated on the menu. Hiring and training part-timers never went smoothly, and it was thanks to the regular customers and my support that the cafe kept running. So, Sana, it's impossible to pay from the cafe's income. That can't be true. Right, Felix. Once we're divorced, we'll be strangers, so you'll need to manage the cafe on your own.
Wait. If I lose your support, I'll have to close down the shop. Even after divorce, keep sponsoring me.
What? Don't say stupid things and face reality. Who would invest in someone who has committed infidelity and has no affection left? Don't make such idiotic statements, it's contagious. Felix pleaded for me not to stop supporting him. I ignored such a man. Meanwhile, Sana suddenly raised her voice.
No, I just can't believe this. I dated you because you said you were a rich business owner. Completely deceived, this is the worst.
Sana. Sana was freaking out, realizing the truth she hadn't been told. It seems she believed Felix's lies and had even quit her job. Moreover, she had maxed out her credit cards, thinking Felix would pay for her extravagant spending. As Sana ranted, Felix fought back just as hard.
Don't be ridiculous. You said you'd support me, right? But you don't do anything around the house. The food is terrible. Did you even learn to cook? What? You said we could just hire a maid for the household stuff. At least do the bare minimum. A woman who can't even do housework, I feel like I've been the one deceived. Don't you dare play the victim here. A man who can't make money is just like a hunter who can't hunt. Absolutely worthless, yet acting all high and mighty, old man.
Leaving the two to hurl insults at each other, I left the house to Lawyer Miller. I'm not sure how long their argument will last, but Lawyer Miller will handle it. Thinking back, I feel foolish for having trusted those people for so long. However, it's true that I was genuinely happy when Sanaa approached me. That's exactly why I can't forgive them. They trampled on my feelings. Eventually, the worst phase of my life with Felix ended with our divorce finalized. As declared, I claimed alimony from the two. Unable to afford living in the luxury condo anymore, Felix and Sanaa moved to a cheaper apartment. With my financial support gone, Felix's cafe struggled and had to be sold. The spot, being in a good location, quickly found a new tenant. They reliably pays. Felix and Sanaa seem to be working multiple part-time jobs day and night. But, burdened with the divorce alimony and Sanaa's credit card payments, they're having a tough time. All of this was informed by Lawyer Miller. I am truly grateful for him. I returned to the luxury condo, reclaiming my peaceful life. However, feeling disgusted knowing the two lived there, I decided to renovate the entire interior. The new room feels more wonderful than ever, like living in a different house. Believing that my happiness lies only in work, I started new business ventures, expanding the work I inherited from my parents. One day, I was teaching a cooking class to my students, as usual, once a week. That day, as usual, I was enjoying cooking with my students when suddenly the door burst open. My ex-husband Felix and Sanaa, in tattered clothes and emitting a foul smell, stormed into the class. Her face was red with anger, and her eyes blazed with intense emotions. It's all your fault our lives have turned into a mess. We can't even afford to eat properly anymore. Give us anything to eat. We haven't eaten anything in a week. Stunned by their drastic change, both I and the other students were speechless.
This is my workplace. I have no intention of discussing personal matters here.
Please leave, I said calmly as the two barged into the classroom with their shoes on. The classroom erupted into chaos, but we were saved by someone.
Both of you. What are you doing?
It was Lawyer Miller. In fact, when discussing the divorce, he mentioned wanting to learn cooking and became a student in my class. He had informed me he would be late to the school today due to work, but his timing was impeccable. You still haven't finished paying the alimony for the affair, and now this? Causing more trouble will only add to your payments.
Shut up. Just feed us anything. I'm seriously starving to death.
Their disgraceful appearance made me regret ever taking care of such a man. However, seeing them so emaciated and seemingly powerless to retaliate, I handed them some bread nearby and said, "Don't ever come here again. Find work and support yourselves." After devouring the bread, the two left. After they were gone, I apologized to Lawyer Miller and the students, working to restore the classroom's atmosphere. Fortunately, the students were understanding, and the incident was quickly resolved. This event made me think about what I could do with cooking, and with Lawyer Miller's advice, I started running a children's cafeteria. The goal of the cafeteria was to provide nutritious meals to children from families who couldn't afford them due to economic reasons. This initiative eventually caught the attention of not only the community but also the media. My cooking class transformed from just a workplace to a place nurturing dreams and hope. In this regard, I must thank my ex-husband.
Surrounded by the innocent smiles of children, I dedicate myself to preparing nutritious meals, day after day. What? Who's there? What are you doing?
Returning from our family trip earlier than scheduled, we noticed the voices of a man and a woman coming from our living room, which should have been empty. Gently opening the door, we found, to our astonishment, a man and a woman entwined on the sofa. I was frozen, shivering with a coldness that engulfed me, even as sweat poured out all over my body. Then, the man called out a woman's name, and she responded with a moan of pleasure to his call. That name and that voice, it was familiar. Suppressing the urge to cover my ears, I peeked through the door gap at the couple again.
Could it be my mother-in-law?
Indeed, it was. To my shock, The woman was my husband's mother.
This is disgusting.
Both my husband, with a face turned pale in astonishment, and my daughter, feeling nauseous with revulsion. They could hardly maintain their composure in this shockingly appalling scene. Right. For evidence, I should record a video. Taking a deep breath to calm myself, I shakily reached into my bag to grab my smartphone. However, my fingers trembled so violently that I couldn't operate it as intended, and in my confusion, I accidentally pressed a different button, causing the phone to slip from my hands and fall. Then, hello? Sally? What's going on? I heard my father-in-law's voice from the phone on the floor. The button I had accidentally pressed. The fate of a man and woman lost to their desires was not one of ideal pleasure, but a world so tragic that everyone would turn their eyes away. If only they had realized this a bit sooner, the future for these two might have been different. My name is Sally. I am a nurse who, 20 years ago, met and married my husband, a pharmaceutical sales representative, at the hospital where I worked. Thanks to my supportive husband, who was always willing to help with household chores and childcare, I was able to balance work and family life, leading a peaceful existence. My in-laws, who lived nearby, always looked out for me, living away from my own parents, and wanted me to rely on them just like my real parents, showing their concern for me since the beginning of our marriage. Our relationship with my in-laws was excellent, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that my life was smooth sailing. They were indeed my benefactors. They were understanding of our working situation, especially my mother-in-law, who was very cooperative. With my husband's late homecoming and my irregular working hours, it was impossible to take care of our daughter on weekdays, so my mother-in-law gladly stepped in to help. She took care of picking up and dropping off our daughter at daycare, playing with her, preparing her meals, and even taking a shower if I was late coming home, waiting for my return. I was so grateful to my mother-in-law, no amount of thanks could suffice. We had decided to cooperate as much as possible in raising our child, but our house was within walking distance of my in-laws, and we were happy to know my mother-in-law wanted to help us out in any way she could. So, when something came up, we decided to leave a key to our house with her. Thus, the trust between us and my in-laws continued to grow and would likely remain unbroken going forward. I had a strong feeling about this and trusted my in-laws more than anyone else. Over 10 years have passed since then, and our daughter has become a middle school student. Our life with both parents working continues, but the need for my mother-in-law's care has significantly decreased, which probably lifted some weight off her shoulders. One day, after finishing an early shift and doing some shopping at the supermarket, I came home and ran into my mother-in-law at the entrance. "What are you doing here by yourself?" I couldn't hide my surprise at this unexpected encounter.
"Oh, Sally, welcome back. You're early today. I thought you'd be home late, so I did some cleaning."
Why would she clean our house? Though puzzled by her expression and actions, I was thankful for the cleaning and understood that, being a stay-at-home mom, she probably had some free time during the day. I thanked her and sent her off with a smile. However, this mysterious behavior continued. Whenever I came home early from work, my mother-in-law would be leaving the entrance. Every time, she'd say she cleaned, brought some side dishes, or folded the laundry before leaving. Gradually, I started to feel uncomfortable with her actions and couldn't happily accept what she was doing anymore. Something was off. Though I appreciated the cleaning, only the living room and bedroom were always sparkling clean. The sofa and bed sheets were impeccably made, without a wrinkle. The side dishes she brought were always in containers too large for our family of 3, and the seals were sometimes broken. I couldn't help but wonder if they were leftovers from someone else. I'm grateful for her wanting to do something for our family, but I really couldn't be comfortable with her entering our home by herself while we were away. Especially since our middle school-aged daughter no longer needed her help. But I couldn't ask for the house key back after all the help we've received and the care she has provided for our daughter, so I kept quiet about my discomfort. Even though I'd occasionally run into her at the entrance, she was still very kind and considerate, so I turned a blind eye to her actions and suppressed my feelings of discomfort. As the harsh winter cold ended and the trees around us began to bloom, we received joyful news from our daughter, who came home smiling. Her hard work in balancing sports activities and studies paid off, and she was accepted into her first-choice high school. We visited my in-laws to share this happiness and celebrated grandly. My in-laws were thrilled, and my daughter looked happy. Indeed, my mother-in-law's feelings for our daughter haven't changed since the old days. Her occasional visits to my parents' house must be because she feels lonely now that her granddaughter is growing up. I decided to think of it that way. A few days later, we planned a family trip, deciding to visit a theme park at our daughter's request. It was a celebration for her passing the exams. Originally, we thought about going after her graduation ceremony when we could take our time, but with the break increasing the number of visitors at the theme park, we figured it wouldn't be as enjoyable. Also, our daughter couldn't wait until break, so we decided to make use of the weekend we both had off for a short one-night, 2-day trip. The first day was for shopping, and the second day was to fully enjoy the theme park before heading home that night, following our daughter's wishes. We informed my in-laws of our plan, and the three of us set off early Saturday morning. At the shopping mall we arrived at after about 3 hours by car. I enjoyed shopping with my daughter. Of course, my husband was on bag-carrying duty. We indulged in our favorite foods at the buffet for dinner, ate lots of desserts, and laughed, saying sweets go to a separate stomach, much to my husband's amazement.
I'm gonna be a nurse just like Mom.
During a family moment in our hotel room, my daughter looked out the window and said those words with great strength and confidence. She had decided on her future by watching me work as a nurse. For that reason, she chose a high school with a nursing program that could give her a qualification as a licensed nurse. Though she must have felt lonely many times as a child when I was busy with work and had to leave her with my mother-in-law, she understood her environment and our jobs, and now she's forging her own path. I'm proud of her as a parent. Her straightforward gaze reflected the limitless possibilities of her future. Thus, our trip's first day ended with smiles all around. The next morning, greeted by a cloudless, sunny sky, we entered the gates of the theme park right at opening time. At the theme park she had longed to visit, our daughter was thrilled from the morning. We took photos with character plushies, screamed in delight at attractions and shows, and I enjoyed myself as if I were a child again.
Let's go on that one next.
Saying so, my daughter quickly headed toward the attraction she had her eyes on. Her figure grew smaller as she walked away.
Kids grow up in the blink of an eye.
It feels like just yesterday I was chasing after her toddling figure. I couldn't believe how much she had grown. I nodded deeply to my husband's words. Then, suddenly, our daughter stumbled and fell forward. We rushed over to her, and it seemed she hadn't noticed a step and had twisted her ankle.
Ouch!
Holding her right ankle, my daughter couldn't stand up because of the pain. My husband quickly took off her sock to check her ankle, but there was no internal bleeding or swelling, and it didn't seem like a fracture that required immediate attention. It was probably a sprain. However, walking was difficult for her due to the pain, and she needed proper treatment at a hospital. Since it wasn't an emergency, and considering the convenience for future visits, we decided to go home first and then see our family doctor, who also operates on weekends. It was a hospital we often used during our daughter's injury-prone early years. Regrettably, just a few hours after opening, we had to leave the theme park and head home. We bought some souvenirs to cheer her up, but my daughter couldn't hide her shock at the trip ending this way.
Once your foot heals, let's come back soon for a redo,
I said, making a promise, and she finally showed a smile. The roads were surprisingly clear, and we got home by mid-afternoon. As we got out of the car with our many bags, we headed towards the entrance.
Huh? The door is unlocked.
My husband frowned at the entrance. It couldn't be unlocked. We had double-checked everything before leaving. Could someone be targeting our house for a break-in? But in broad daylight. Then, my husband quietly and slowly opened the door to avoid making any noise. It was clear someone other than our family was inside our house. Who could it be, And for what purpose, and how did they get in? I was sweating profusely. My heart was pounding against my chest, and my legs were frozen in fear.
We don't know who's inside, but it must be an intruder. Let's enter quietly so as not to be noticed. You two follow me. And if anything happens, run out and call the police.
My husband said, leading the way as we quietly entered the house. Then, from the living room, we heard noises and voices of a man and a woman. What on earth is going on? My heartbeat intensified even more. My daughter, gripping my hand tightly, seemed to be sweating as well. What on earth was happening behind this door? Then, my husband quietly opened the door to the living room. What we saw through the gap. It was a shocking scene beyond our imagination. There was a man and woman, entwined on the sofa, moving vigorously.
What? What are you doing?
I exclaimed in a low voice, but the two on the sofa seemed completely unaware of our presence. Frozen with fear and confusion, tears started to stream down my face. I couldn't understand the situation. But there was no denying that what was unfolding before our eyes was happening in reality. Then, the man called out her name, and the woman responded with a moan of pleasure to his call. That name and that voice. I recognized it. Though I wanted to cover my ears to block out their voices, I gasped and looked again through the gap in the door.
Could it be my mother-in-law?
Indeed, it was. To my shock, the woman was my husband's mother. My husband stood frozen, his face turning pale with astonishment.
What are you doing in someone else's house?
Shaking with tension and surprise, I shouted as loudly as I could. However, the two were so engrossed in their own world that my voice didn't reach them. Upon closer inspection, I noticed their clothes scattered on the floor.
What's this?
I was even more shocked. Bright red underwear and a flashy dress. Given the situation, these had to belong to my mother-in-law. But my mother-in-law is turning 65 this year, wearing such flashy items. Faced with this unbelievable reality, a chill ran down my spine, and I shivered.
This is disgusting.
Then, my daughter covered her mouth with her hand. I shouldn't have let my daughter witness such a shocking scene. And my husband, unable to hide his shock, behaved suspiciously, as if his soul had left his body. It was understandable. Considering both their physical and emotional states, I suggested they go upstairs to rest a bit while I handled the situation here, and they slowly ascended the stairs. Peeking into the living room again, the fervor between my mother-in-law and the man had reached its climax. What should I do? Does my father-in-law know about this? No, he couldn't possibly. My in-laws always seemed so loving in front of us. The thought that one of them could be having an affair never crossed my mind. That's it, I'll report this to my father-in-law. But first, I need to gather evidence. Trying to calm myself down amid extreme tension and turmoil, I managed to pull out my smartphone from my bag. I attempted to record a video, but my fingers trembled so much that I couldn't operate the screen properly.
I need to record this quickly.
My rush only led to more confusion, and I accidentally pressed a different button. Suddenly, the display on the screen changed, and in my panic, I dropped the smartphone. It made a sound as it hit the floor. Oops. I've noticed for sure. I held my breath and looked at them again. Fortunately, it seemed they hadn't noticed me at all. Then, hello? Sally? What's going on? Suddenly, I heard my father-in-law's voice. Shocked, I looked at the smartphone. My call had accidentally connected to a video call with my father-in-law. The button I had mistakenly pressed was for video calling. In my rush to inform him, I had accidentally called him. Hearing my father-in-law's kind voice brought back some calmness amidst my confusion, and I decided to tell him the truth. But my in-laws had such a good relationship. By revealing my mother-in-law's affair, I would be destroying the relationship between these two. Feeling sorry for my father-in-law, who would be the most shocked by this, I was torn between whether to inform him or keep silent. However, I couldn't bear the thought of my mother-in-law deceiving him and continuing this affair.
I was hesitant to tell you, but what mother-in-law is doing is definitely not healthy. I can't forgive her.
I picked up the smartphone from the floor and aimed its camera at the two on the sofa.
Right now, she is having an affair in our home.
And so, the live broadcast of my mother-in-law's affair began. On the other end of the phone, my father-in-law was speechless, unable to hide his surprise. I felt terribly sorry thinking about how he must be feeling. The betrayal by my mother-in-law must have caused him unimaginable pain.
Sally!
My father-in-law's voice was lower than usual, filled with anger.
Thank you for telling me.
I'm heading over now, so please keep an eye on them, he said before hanging up. Anticipating a confrontation, I filmed the adulterous scene as evidence before heading back upstairs. My daughter had regained some composure, and her complexion had returned to normal. I told my husband, who was sitting next to our daughter, that my father-in-law was on his way, and we discussed supporting him through whatever storm was about to ensue. Leaving my daughter upstairs, my furious husband and I went back downstairs to check on my mother-in-law. The affair had ended, and the lover, as if he owned the place, opened our fridge and started drinking a beer with a casualness that made me nauseous.
Hey! You're drinking again. I've told you not to just help yourself,
my mother-in-law said in a sweet tone I had never heard before. The ease with which her lover rummaged through our kitchen struck me as profoundly odd. The two of them, completely unaware of our presence, lounged as if they were in their own home. They never imagined that the family supposed to be enjoying the theme park would be right behind the living room door. The two of them looked like a happy couple in a scene from a drama. Their moment of bliss, like a scene from a drama, was about to shatter with a loud noise. Then, the front door opened with a bang, and my father-in-law entered. My mother-in-law and her lover were startled by the noise. They finally noticed us. And my father-in-law, showing his anger, was the first to throw open the living room door and strode towards the two with determined footsteps.
What are you doing?
My father-in-law, who wasn't supposed to be there, along with us, the couple. Seeing us, my mother-in-law and her lover, in their underwear, were so surprised that their faces turned pale instantly.
What is this disgraceful appearance? Get dressed immediately.
My father-in-law yelled at my mother-in-law, then turned his gaze towards the lover. Then, the father-in-law suddenly showed a surprised expression and was left speechless. The lover was actually a direct subordinate from his company. He was a single man in his 30s who lived alone, and my father-in-law, who sometimes brought him home for meals, had a close personal and professional relationship with him.
How could you?
My father-in-law couldn't hide his shock. The betrayal by his wife and subordinate must have been devastating.
Both of you sit down on the floor.
Let's have a proper talk, said my husband, unable to contain his anger. After making my mother-in-law and her subordinate dress and sit down in Siza, my husband interrogated them fiercely. The two, sitting as told, looked down and kept silent. They were possibly trying to maintain their silence. But they must know they can't just walk away from this situation as if nothing happened.
Don't just stay silent, say something.
My husband's anger reached its peak, and he grabbed the subordinate by the collar. At that moment, stop. He's not to blame. It's all my fault. My mother-in-law suddenly broke down in tears. Whose tears are these supposed to be? Surely my father-in-law is the one who deserves to cry the most. My father-in-law, fists clenched and shaking, glared at my mother-in-law and her lover. Then, my mother-in-law slowly started to speak. However, her justification was incredibly selfish, further fueling our rage. It all started about 2 years ago when my father-in-law brought the subordinate home. As usual, my in-laws and the subordinate had a pleasant dinner together. Suddenly, my father-in-law received an urgent call from work and had to leave, leaving my mother-in-law and the subordinate alone. Overwhelmed by a sudden urge, my mother-in-law began to seduce the subordinate with sweet words. Having a preference for younger men, my mother-in-law had started to see the frequently visiting subordinate as a man. Initially, the subordinate was hesitant and refused my mother-in-law's advances, but having had little experience with women, he couldn't contain his excitement. Just this once, they thought, and thus they indulged in pleasure on the living room sofa. After that, my mother-in-law started calling the subordinate frequently. He had decided it would only happen once and refused to meet again, but my mother-in-law, making up excuses like just for tea or I have a present for you, gradually made it impossible for him to refuse, and they began to secretly meet in cafes. Each time they met at the cafe, my mother-in-law would get close to him and lead him to a hotel, excited. That was the nature of their ongoing relationship. Disgusting. It is the only word for it.
Since 2 years ago. Could it possibly be?
Suddenly, all of my mother-in-law's actions and the subordinate's familiarity with my home came flooding back to my mind. My mother-in-law, whom I'd run into at the entrance on my early shifts. Tracing back my memories, this all started about 2 years ago as well.
You've been meeting here in this house, haven't you?
The neatly made bed in the spotless bedroom, along with the living room sofa, were clean to perfection, not a single hair left behind. Additionally, there were more pre-purchased and open side dishes than for my family. There's no doubt they were spending time in this house until just before I returned.
What do you think this house is?
I yelled at my mother-in-law, trembling. A mix of anger and despair welled up inside me, and I couldn't stop the tears. My mother-in-law just looked down and quietly apologized. And her shameless excuses continued. Initially, the two spent their secret meetings in hotels. But as their meetings became more frequent and expenses piled up, my mother-in-law sought a cheaper place. When she happened upon the keys to our house, she knew she shouldn't use her son's home but had already lost her sense of reason. She scouted our house when we were away and chose it as their meeting spot. Checking my work schedule and shifts noted on the wall calendar, all the meticulous cleaning and the pre-purchased, open side dishes were nothing but camouflage. Realizing we were using furniture and eating leftovers from their secret meetings was utterly shocking, and I felt dizzy and nauseous. Reflecting on the past 2 years, the number of days my mother-in-law and the subordinate spent in our home was countless. My husband, pale, covered his face and sat down. Then, you promised me you wouldn't cheat again after crying and begging for my forgiveness that time. Was that all a lie? To think, at your age, with such a young man, pathetic. At those words, my husband and I were shocked and looked at my father-in-law. What on earth does this mean?
As promised, it's divorce. I can't go on with you anymore. Just get out of this house.
I later heard from my father-in-law that this wasn't the first time my mother-in-law had gone after younger men. There had been a similar affair in the past, which, upon discovery, had caused my father-in-law to explode in rage, to which my mother-in-law had tearfully apologized. They had promised never to engage in infidelity again and chose to rebuild their family. At that time, my mother-in-law had written a note stating that if such a thing happened again, they would divorce. My husband was shocked as this was news to him. Despite this, my mother-in-law's pursuit of younger men, even after such a vow, might indeed be an illness or an addiction. However, this time, my mother-in-law showed no signs of clinging or crying at my father-in-law's words of divorce. Instead, she defiantly smiled, as if she had been hoping for this. The sudden change in my mother-in-law's demeanor brought tension to the room.
I'm serious about him. Unlike some old man, a young, dependable man is obviously better.
Fine, let's get divorced. She retorted, disrespectfully dismissing my father-in-law's age. All my respect and gratitude towards my mother-in-law, who had maintained a good relationship with us until now, crumbled after this incident. The subordinate, too, seemed to have accepted the idea of being with my mother-in-law, who was over 30 years his senior. They clung to each other, unwilling to part. I felt all strength leave my body and suddenly sat down on the floor. This was too much to take in right after returning from our trip. Exhaustion washed over me. Then, looking at the clock, I was surprised. Over 3 hours had passed since we arrived home.
We have to get to our daughter's doctor's appointment soon, so if you don't mind, we should wrap this up.
Thus, the divorce between my in-laws was settled, and we agreed to discuss the details at my in-laws' house later. My father-in-law repeatedly apologized to us before leaving the house. My mother-in-law and the subordinate avoided our gaze, shamefully sneaking out of the house. Fortunately, my daughter's injury wasn't serious, and she was prescribed some ointment and painkillers, fully recovering in about a week. However, the emotional scars ran deep, and we stopped discussing my mother-in-law altogether. A few days later, we arranged a meeting to discuss everything, visiting my in-laws' house. There were the in-laws, the subordinate, my husband, and me. An uneasy atmosphere filled the living room as the five of us sat around the table. What now? Something seemed off. On closer inspection, there was a subtle distance between my mother-in-law and the subordinate. Not only were they not making eye contact, but the subordinate was actually turning his face away from my mother-in-law. It appears there was some conflict between them after they were kicked out of my in-laws' house. It goes without saying that the affair began with my mother-in-law's skillful seduction. She spared no expense in securing her young lover, lavishing him with expensive gifts, meals, hotel stays, and even inviting him on luxurious cruises. All because money was no object, as she would often say. Believing this, the subordinate planned to have my mother-in-law cover the alimony to my father-in-law and live off her as a kept man for a few years, banking his own income as savings. However, the money spent on the affair was all from my father-in-law's earnings, and when it was revealed, it turned out my mother-in-law, a housewife, was practically penniless. Upon learning this, the lover promptly broke up with her. Rejected by her lover, my mother-in-law was trying hard to win back my father-in-law's attention for her survival. But it seems she could not shake my father-in-law's firm resolve, and the divorce seemed inevitable. Moreover, the lover was desperately apologizing to my father-in-law. Because his frequent secret meetings with my mother-in-law, under the pretense of working outside, had been exposed at his company. Though he appeared to be diligently working outside, his lack of sales results had been questioned by the company, and when my father-in-law presented the evidence I had filmed, all of the subordinates' misconducts were revealed. Facing the risk of being fired, the subordinate begged his boss, my father-in-law, to mediate with the company on his behalf. My father-in-law just shook his head in disapproval at the ridiculous situation, as the discussion dragged on. Give it up. A promise is a promise. The divorce papers have already been submitted, and we didn't gather here today to talk about this. We're here to discuss what happens next. My father-in-law said, presenting a settlement document to the two. After consulting with a lawyer, we've decided you two will pay this amount in alimony. Also, you'll compensate my son and his wife for the furniture they had to replace. He continued, asking us to show the receipts for the new bed, sheets, and sofa we had purchased. Ever since that day, every time we saw the bed and sofa in our home, we felt a sense of disgust, especially my daughter, who developed an aversion, prompting us to quickly replace them and other daily items that my mother-in-law and the subordinate likely used. Upon seeing the receipts and the amount of alimony, the two's faces turned pale as they begged my father-in-law for mercy. Of course, we hadn't bought expensive furniture, but the bed, sofa, and other daily items amounted to a significant sum. Considering it as compensation for the emotional distress our family suffered, accepting the payment wouldn't be wrong. However, the two tried to evade paying by claiming it was for something else. If you two can't afford to pay, then we have no choice. I'll speak to your parents and have them cover these amounts. The subordinate's face turned even paler, and he begged, crying, promising to pay everything himself to us. Likely, the ages of the subordinate's parents and my mother-in-law weren't much different. Even if it was for money, having an affair with a woman about the same age as his mother was something he couldn't possibly confess to his parents. And so, after the discussion, the subordinate left my in-law's house, shoulders slumped. He had foolishly allowed my mother-in-law to talk him into ruining his life. However, this experience might serve as a good opportunity for him to reflect on his weakness blinded by money. As we were hurrying to leave my in-law's house to return to our daughter waiting at home, my mother-in-law suddenly approached us. I don't have a home to go back to anymore. I broke up with him, so I have to leave his house by tomorrow. Look, I was kicked out of this house too. Could you possibly let me stay with you for a little while? My mother-in-law, who squandered my father-in-law's money on a younger man, used our home as a hotel substitute, and inflicted emotional distress on our daughter, losing everything as a consequence. Being kicked out from her lover's place and having nowhere to go doesn't mean she can just seek refuge in our home. The audacity is astonishing.
Enough is enough. How can you say such a thing with a straight face? You don't even work, living off someone else's money to do such things. Just because your lover dumped you, you think you can just move into our house? Have you no shame? Don't you think you should work, atone for your sins, and try to start over?
My husband rebuked her fiercely.
I'm sorry, but we cannot let you into our house. Our daughter was there with us that day and saw what you did. Since then, she finds you disgusting, feeling nauseous just by remembering. She couldn't even enter the living room for a while, shocked by the betrayal from her beloved grandmother. Do you understand how she feels?
At my words, my mother-in-law's expression stiffened for the first time, covering her face with her hands.
I'm sorry. What have I done?
It seemed she was truly shocked to be seen by her granddaughter. But it's too late for regrets now. My mother-in-law will have to live with her mistake for the rest of her life. And with no one willing to lend her a hand, she walked away from us, burdened with the anxiety of an uncertain future. Struggling to find a job without any work experience, my mother-in-law eventually found a part-time cleaning job and managed to rent an old, small apartment. Despite working tirelessly every day, her take-home pay was meager, barely covering the alimony to my father-in-law and her minimal living expenses, leaving her broke at the end of each month. Without the luxury to care for her appearance, no one could imagine she once seduced younger men based on her disheveled looks. Yet, she still couldn't forget her relationship with the former lover, hoping to reunite with him someday. But we can't forget the words the subordinate hurled at my mother-in-law during their last confrontation.
Promising me there was plenty of money, you lying old hag.
My husband and I were stunned by these words. After letting my mother-in-law spend lavishly on him and enjoying the benefits, he discarded her upon discovering there was no money left. Revealing there was no love, only greed. Ironically, their relationship wouldn't have lasted anyway. Breaking up was for the best. Residents spotted my mother-in-law wandering near my father-in-law's house, perhaps missing the life they once shared. By this time, my father-in-law had no lingering feelings for my mother-in-law and was actually living a peaceful life in a new place, having sold the house to erase memories of my mother-in-law. Learning this, my mother-in-law stood dumbfounded in front of the closed-in entrance. The subordinate, too, had been ousted from his company after the truth about his skipping work to continue the affair with his boss's wife came to light. Having lost his job, the subordinate reluctantly used his savings to pay the alimony and our furniture expenses, but soon his savings ran dry. Even after finding a new job, driven by desperation and perhaps emboldened by his previous scheme with my mother-in-law, he started targeting older women, hoping to make a quick buck by exploiting his youth. Fortuitously meeting a wealthy woman, he smirked, thinking he'd secured a comfortable life, only to be scammed by her in an investment fraud, losing all his hard-earned money. Then, enticed by the promise of quick riches and without any real evidence, he trusted her investment talks and even turned to consumer loans. It also ended up swindled, leaving him with debt and high interest. Moreover, his new job was at a highly exploitative company, where he was worked like a slave regardless of labor laws, earning a salary comparable to a student's part-time job. Exhausted in body and spirit, he begged for re-employment at my father-in-law's company, exaggerating his hardships to elicit sympathy, but the world isn't so forgiving. Dismissed as reaping what he sowed, he left, disheartened. Meanwhile, our family embarked on a fresh start. My daughter adjusted to her new high school life, making many friends, and actively participating in club activities, enjoying her school days. While not completely erasing the shock and disgust towards my mother-in-law, she managed to recover and move forward. My father-in-law, retired and living leisurely surrounded by nature in the suburbs, enjoys his solitude, thanks to video calls, ensuring he never feels lonely. We visit him once a month, enjoying the break from the city's hustle and surrounded by nature. Still, my father-in-law feels guilty towards my daughter for what happened with my mother-in-law, wishing she'd forget and live happily as soon as possible. He mentions this like a mantra every time we visit. With my father-in-law's kindness, my daughter has regained her bright smile, taking deep breaths under the clear blue sky.
When I become a nurse, I'll give you a health checkup every month, Grandpa,
she promised, to which my father-in-law smiled and agreed. Laughter from such a family fills a peaceful afternoon, with my father-in-law undoubtedly wishing for more days like this.
I'm so sorry to ask, but could you possibly take me to the hospital?
I dragged my aching body and finally made it to my mother-in-law's door, pleading with her. However, when she opened the door, to my surprise, she was all packed up with a suitcasito go on a trip.
Since Emily's got a cold and staying here might just get me sick too, I'm heading off to a spa vacation with some friends. And look at this mess. Make sure you clean up.
My mother-in-law quickly left for her trip. I couldn't believe it. My mother-in-law had offered to live with us, claiming she wanted to help out since my husband was often away on business trips and I was pregnant. Yet she never helped with the housework or childcare, and now, in this emergency, she was abandoning us. I was struggling to stay conscious. If I collapsed, what would happen to my daughter left all alone? I couldn't let her be alone. With the last of my strength, I reached out for help from someone. And it unexpectedly led to revenge on my mother-in-law. What she would face after her true nature was revealed. I'm Emily. I live with my husband and our 2-year-old daughter, Holly. My husband and I met in college. I'm from a rural area in Kentucky, moved to an apartment near the college for my studies, while my husband was a local, commuting from home. We started dating during our college years. I had visited his parents' home a few times, where I met his parents. His father would say, having a daughter must feel something like this, treating me like his own daughter. However, my mother-in-law didn't seem to think highly of me. Through our conversations, I learned that her family owned substantial local land, and she seemed to have a strong attachment to local traditions, disliking the fact that I came from another area. She would often complain in front of me, "There are plenty of good girls around here." But neither my father-in-law nor my husband paid her much heed, and she seemed unapologetic. Despite this, I hoped we could get along better over time. After graduating and 2 years into our marriage, we had our daughter. My father-in-law, celebrating our marriage and pregnancy, built us a house on their land, and we started our new life there. The area, being a new residential district, was selling plots rapidly. Our neighborhood was filled with young couples and families with young children like ours. We quickly became friends with our neighbors, enjoying a comfortable and welcoming community. My pregnancy went smoothly, and Holly was born without any issues. My father-in-law adored her. But my mother-in-law acted distant towards Holly, not trying to get too close. Possibly because of her dislike for me and her germophobia, reacting excessively if Holly reached out to her after being held by my husband. Seeing her like that made me very sad, and I felt sorry for my daughter. But I wondered if it was just something we had to accept if my mother-in-law was a germaphobe. As a daughter-in-law, I felt I couldn't say anything. Despite the awkwardness at my in-laws, at home, I enjoyed a relaxed and happy parenting experience. Holly was adorable, and the community of young families around us meant she had plenty of children her age to play with, preventing any feelings of isolation in parenting. Our neighbors, particularly one family with a child the same age as Holly and the wife my age, became close friends, often sharing meals and outings together. 2 years after Holly was born, I became pregnant with our second child. Luckily, my morning sickness was mild, but managing my energetic daughter while feeling unwell was challenging. My husband, thrilled about the pregnancy, had recently been transferred to a department with frequent business trips, adding to his worry for us. The support from our neighbors, offering help whenever needed, gave me strength. During this time, we lost my father-in-law. My father-in-law had a history of heart problems, and one morning, he collapsed from chest pain. It was a heart attack. My mother-in-law called an ambulance immediately, and he was rushed to the hospital, but he passed away before we could get there. My husband, daughter, and I hurried to the hospital as soon as we got the call, but by the time we arrived, my father-in-law was already gone. My mother-in-law, devastated, wept openly, while my husband comforted her. Holly, still too young to understand, looked confused. I cherished the memory of our last visit to my in-laws, where my father-in-law had been so happy about our growing family. He was so happy for us, and he always looked out for my well-being. My father-in-law said, "You're going to be a big sister, huh," as he hugged Holly with so much love. Seeing him like that made me feel incredibly happy. I adored my kind father-in-law as if he were my own father, and not being able to let him hold my second child was so painful that I couldn't stop my tears. After the funeral, life started to settle down. Today, we were helping my mother-in-law sort through my father-in-law's belongings. Her saying, "It's going to be tough without your father." Certainly, my father-in-law was far from being domineering. He was capable of handling anything around the house. From gardening and heavy lifting to cooking and cleaning, he was always proactive. Naturally, I thought it was understandable to feel lost without him suddenly around, and I felt sorry for my mother-in-law. Then, seemingly struck by a sudden good idea, she exclaimed, "That's it. Emily, you're pregnant and it must be tough, right? How about I move in with you guys? If I take over the household chores, it'll surely ease your burden." She proposed to me and my husband, smiling cheerfully. Honestly, I was worried about living with my mother-in-law. After all, she seemed to have some animosity towards me, not to mention her germophobia. I wondered if she could really live together with me and my daughter. But she seemed quite pleased with her brilliant idea, eagerly awaiting our response. My husband looked at me, as if asking, "What should we do?" Being pregnant, I knew I wouldn't be able to move around as much soon, and my husband was always away on business trips. With our 2-year-old daughter still requiring a lot of care, having an extra pair of adult hands around would certainly be reassuring. My husband was also worried about being away, and we could understand my mother-in-law feeling anxious about living alone after my father-in-law's sudden passing. Since my husband was an only child, we had agreed upon the possibility of living with his parents eventually, though we hadn't expected it to happen so soon. Despite my reservations about the arrangement, I thought it might be better for everyone if I could just put up with it a little. So, I decided to accept living with my mother-in-law. In subsequent discussions, we decided that to keep my daughter's environment as stable as possible, my mother-in-law would move into our home, and she would help reduce my workload by taking on some household chores. As for what to do with her house, since my in-laws owned other properties, we decided to put off any decisions for the time being. Not long after our talks, my mother-in-law moved in, and our new living arrangement began. "I'm counting on you, Emily. Think of me as a real family and don't hesitate to ask for anything," she said with a smile. Though she had been rather cold to me before, it seemed she was trying to change her approach with the new living situation. I resolved to try my best to get along with her too, and responded, "Thank you, I'm looking forward to it." That day, we helped her unpack in the room we had prepared for her. The day after my mother-in-law moved in, my husband left for a 2-week business trip. I was determined to make the best of living with my mother-in-law and safeguarding the home in my husband's absence. A week into his trip, I had initially thought to gently show my mother-in-law how to use the washing machine and vacuum cleaner, considering she might still be getting used to our home. However, she didn't seem interested in doing any chores or looking after my daughter. Instead, she had requests that only increased my workload, like wanting her laundry done separately. "Emily, I prefer to separate my laundry from others. Could you run the washing machine for me separately? Or I'm a bit of a germaphobe, so I get concerned about the cleanliness of the bathroom. Could we increase the cleaning frequency?" I was puzzled and overwhelmed by my mother-in-law's demands, which she made as if they were the most natural thing in the world, and I struggled to meet them without objection. The initial agreement had been that living together would help ease my burden during pregnancy. Yet, so far, I was handling all the housework and childcare by myself, now doubled with the addition of my mother-in-law's share. While I rushed around, she would leisurely watch TV by herself. When my daughter tried to engage her in play, she would shoo her away. Understanding that her grandmother wouldn't play with her, my daughter stopped seeking her out. I also found myself unable to invite my mom friends over for a chat and playdates, which had been my way of relieving stress, out of consideration for my mother-in-law. I managed to get through the 2 weeks until my husband returned, despite not feeling well due to morning sickness. When my husband finally came back from his trip, my mother-in-law suddenly started taking initiative in household chores and cooking meals, as if the previous 2 weeks had never happened. During dinner, my husband thanked her for her help while he was away, and she responded as if she had been actively contributing all along, "It's nothing." I moved in with that intention, while cheerfully ignoring my astonished look. Even after, my mother-in-law only did the bare minimum of housework on nights when my husband was home. During the day, when he was at work or away on long business trips, she did nothing at all. I really needed her help when my husband wasn't around, but instead, my workload only increased. Unable to bear it any longer, I vented all my frustrations to my husband the night he returned from a business trip. I was hesitant to complain about his mother, but I was so stressed that I had to tell him everything. However, my usually kind and calm husband seemed unusually irritated and dismissively said, "I think Mom's just not used to living in our house yet. Why don't you try explaining things to her more clearly?" When I tried to press the issue, he cut me off, saying, "I'm swamped with work, especially with the busy season. I'm counting on you to handle things at home," before closing the door to the bathroom behind him. I felt helpless, realizing my pleas were falling on deaf ears. I regretted agreeing to this living arrangement. But now, it was too late for regrets. The only solace in this stressful living situation was venting to my neighbor during our walks. She was very concerned about my situation. It didn't change anything, but having someone listen and care made me feel a bit lighter. Then, during one of my husband's trips, I fell ill with a fever. My mother-in-law treated me like I was contagious, locking herself in her room even more than usual and, of course, not helping at all. Despite feeling sick, I still had to care for my daughter. But eventually, I reached my limit. My fever soared above 103 degrees Fahrenheit, and I felt so dizzy and weak that I could hardly stand, and my pregnant belly felt unusually tight and painful. As a last resort, I dragged myself to my mother-in-law's door and knocked, pleading, "I'm so sorry to ask, but could you please take me to the hospital?" I asked her with my last breath. When the door opened, I thought she might have been moved by my dire state. But instead of a worried expression, I was met by my mother-in-law dressed up with a suitcase in hand. "What?" Confused and feeling delirious from the fever, I froze as she said, "Since you've caught a cold, and I don't want to catch it too, I'm going on a spa trip with friends. I'll be back before he returns from his trip. Oh, and make sure you clean up this mess." With that, she left me there, staggering and alone. I had no strength left to stop her. I had depended on her as my last hope, and she had abandoned me without a second thought. Despairing over my mother-in-law's unbelievable actions, I felt like I was on the verge of losing consciousness, but I couldn't afford to collapse here, not with my daughter depending on me. Desperate, I decided to ask my neighbor for help. Even though we were close, I wondered if it was too much to ask, but I had no other choice. With the last of my energy, I carried my daughter to the neighbor's house and rang the doorbell. My neighbor immediately opened the door, seeing my distress, and listened as I explained my situation. After I finished speaking, I collapsed from exhaustion. Shocked, she called an ambulance for me. When I regained consciousness in the hospital, a nurse informed me that my daughter was being looked after by my neighbor and that I should rest easy. Grateful for my neighbor's kindness, I decided to stay in the hospital overnight for observation. After a night of treatments and rest, I felt better, though still feverish. I had an ultrasound to check on the baby, who was thankfully fine. Before going to my neighbor's to pick up my daughter, I stopped by my house to drop off some things, only to find my husband, who was supposed to be on a business trip, taking care of our daughter and waiting for me. Surprised, my daughter ran up to me, shouting, "Mommy." I hugged her and apologized to both her and my husband. "I'm so sorry for worrying you." My husband, looking unshaven and tired, hugged us back and tearfully apologized.
"I'm so sorry. I should have listened. I had no idea things would get this bad."
Although I had much to say, it was clear he had rushed back as soon as he heard what happened.
"I heard everything from the neighbor, including what's been going on. Leave the rest to me, and just focus on resting,"
he said, taking over the care of our daughter and the household chores so I could rest in the bedroom. I took his advice and finally allowed myself some much-needed rest. 2 days after my mother-in-law left for her trip, she called our home. I was too sick to answer, and my husband, struggling with the unfamiliar chores, didn't pick up. It was our daughter who answered the phone. My mischievous daughter, Holly, has recently been on a phone call spree, enjoying chatting away.
"Oh, did Holly pick up?
Grandma's coming home now. Did your mom clean up properly?" It seems Holly answered the phone on speaker mode, making my mother-in-law's voice clearly audible. When asked, Holly responded in her baby talk. "Mommy. Got all hot."
"Hot?"
My mother-in-law's voice flipped in surprise.
"She looked sick when I was leaving, but it couldn't be. Could she have collapsed and passed away?"
My mother-in-law tried to clarify with Holly, but having had her fill of chatting, Holly hung up. I remembered what my neighbor had told me. When I collapsed at her place, she had called an ambulance. While I was being transported, she comforted my crying daughter by saying, "Holly's mommy got so hot from her fever, she almost burned up. But she'll be okay after resting." It seems Holly wanted to convey what the neighbor had told her to my mother-in-law, but obviously couldn't do it well. After the call, my panicked mother-in-law rushed home, only to be met by my husband. He had overheard the call from Holly to my mother-in-law and was waiting for her return.
"Why are you here? Where's Emily? Holly said on the phone that she burned. What does that mean?"
My mother-in-law was in a panic, surprised to find my husband, who was supposed to be away on a business trip, at home. "Where have you been?" My husband didn't answer her question but asked her, quietly yet with anger in his voice. Worried by my husband's demeanor, Holly and I peeked out from inside the house. My mother-in-law stammered, trying to make excuses, "It's not like that. I didn't know anything. Emily didn't tell me anything." But her eyes were darting everywhere, and her excuses were clearly desperate attempts to cover up the truth.
"After you left for your trip, Emily collapsed from a high fever and was taken to the hospital by ambulance. I've heard about everything you've done to Emily so far. Even though I was busy with work, I'm furious at myself for not noticing sooner, but I'm even more disappointed in you. I can't live with someone who treats my family so carelessly. We're ending the living arrangement. Please leave immediately and don't contact us again."
My husband declared, effectively disowning her. After a moment of shock, my mother-in-law trembled with anger and shouted at me, "This is all your fault for lying. You're the one who should be leaving."
"I haven't lied about anything. You're the one who lied about wanting to help by moving in. Everything that's happened is the result of your own actions."
I had always held back my true feelings around my mother-in-law. But with my husband's support and considering the danger she put me, Holly, and our unborn child in, I couldn't forgive her this time. I firmly rejected her. Stunned by my resistance, for I had never talked back to her before. My mother-in-law quickly tried to appeal to Holly with a sweet voice, "Holly, you want to live with Grandma, right?" However, her plan backfired when Holly loudly said, "No, Grandma, no." My mother-in-law was frozen in shock. It was natural for Holly to reject someone who didn't play with her and treated her as an inconvenience. My mother-in-law, not expecting Holly's rejection, packed her things under my husband's insistence and left for her own home. But the story didn't end there. Once I was feeling better, I invited my neighbor over for a chat, something I couldn't do while living with my mother-in-law. My neighbor mentioned, "I heard something from my mother recently." I realized I had heard this story from her before. During our conversation, it came to light that my neighbor was actually the daughter of one of my mother-in-law's friends. My mother-in-law, who had many friends due to being a prominent landowner, soon found her bullying behavior widely known among her circle, leading to her being ostracized. My mother-in-law occasionally called, crying and begging for forgiveness, asking me to mediate with her friends. But I refused, reminding her, "As I said before, you brought this on yourself. I'm busy, so excuse me." Cut off by her friends and looked down upon by neighbors and relatives who heard about what happened from my husband, my mother-in-law lived in isolation. Despite her attempts to reconcile, my husband and I were done with her. I'm fed up with living with my mother-in-law and thinking about everything that's happened. I just want to keep my distance from now on. As the seasons changed, I safely gave birth to our second child, a boy. Holly adored her little brother and eagerly helped take care of him. Watching them, I vowed to be a strong mother who could properly raise her children. Finally back, you witch.
What?
It was when I came home from shopping and opened the door. My husband came running from the back and said that. I couldn't believe he would say something like that to me, even though we're married. "You really fooled me, didn't you?"
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Anyone would react that way if they were suddenly told something like that. Then, my husband showed me something.
Well, you'll understand if you see this, right?
What he was holding was a small box. Inside, there was a note of bank information with $400,000 of retirement money hidden in it. Moreover, it was supposed to be locked so it wouldn't be found.
Why do you have that? I don't need to tell you that. But, hiding it in such a place.
He laughed at me as if mocking me. He must have searched for it while I was away.
It's the same as stealing to take it without permission.
What are you talking about? Your money is our marital property.
I'm free to do whatever I want with it, right? Don't joke with me. I gave your retirement money of $400,000 to my mom.
No complaints, right? If you refuse, it's divorce. I couldn't understand how he could think that way. Of course, I had no intention of giving even a penny to my oppressive mother-in-law. However, at this moment, I had an idea.
If that's what you want, please go ahead.
Yeah, I will.
In that case, let's get a divorce. I was gonna do that anyway.
I filed for divorce immediately. And a month later. During this time, my ex-husband and his family were recklessly spending on houses, trips, and more. I would never just hand over the money that easily.
Hey! What's this all about? The balance is only 7 cents.
That was to be expected. I had been plotting my revenge on them shortly after our divorce. What awaited them was hell itself. I'm Ivy, currently working at a securities company. I've been busy but fulfilling my days.
Sorry. The meeting went longer than expected.
It's okay. So, where are you taking me today? That's for you to find out. I had a boyfriend since college. Tim, who would later become my husband. It had become a routine for us to go out for dinner after work. We both liked alcohol, so we often went to bars and such. But today was a little different.
Here?
Yes, let's hurry. He took me to a fancy restaurant with a beautiful night view. While enjoying our time, Tim suddenly got serious. I braced myself. Will you marry me? Are you sure about me?
Of course. I want to be with you forever. Yes.
I had suspected, but Tim proposed to me. We were applauded by those around us, and I was enveloped in happiness. Then we went to greet his parents.
I'm nervous.
It's okay, they're both kind. He reassured me, so I was able to greet them without worry. His parents warmly welcomed us, and without any trouble, we became husband and wife. Our married life began smoothly at first. Since we shared household chores, I was able to focus on my work.
My dad has.
I received a panicked call from Tim while at work.
What's wrong? Did something happen to your father? Just got a call from Mom. He collapsed and was taken to the hospital. What? Is he okay?
Tim didn't answer right away. A bad feeling came over me.
Is he okay?
He's unconscious right now. It seems my father-in-law had a subarachnoid hemorrhage. The sudden news confused me too.
I'll come too.
Are you sure?
Of course.
I quickly explained the situation to my boss and got permission to leave early. Fortunately, the hospital wasn't too far away, so I arrived quickly.
Where's your father?
I asked Tim, but he just shook his head.
Could it be?
He didn't make it. My father-in-law had passed away just before I arrived at the hospital.
Then, what about your mother?
She hasn't come.
Why not?
Tim's expression darkened even more. Those two weren't on good terms.
I'm hearing this for the first time.
They pretended to be okay in front of others. It was shocking news. In the end, my mother-in-law didn't come to the hospital that day. The funeral was led by Tim. My mother-in-law did attend the funeral but seemed somewhat inconvenienced. Curious, I approached her.
Are you okay?
Yes, I'm fine.
It was good that he died soon. What?
Such an end suited that man.
That's a bit too harsh.
What? I felt fear in my mother-in-law's face.
No, nothing.
Well, anyway, he's gone now, so I'll do as I please.
What do you mean?
You'll find out soon enough, she said, laughing. I didn't fully understand the intention behind my mother-in-law's words at that time. And soon, I would face an event that made it all too clear. That day, Tim took a personal day off. I came home after 9 p.m. from work and found an unexpected person waiting, my mother-in-law.
Do you always come home this late? Why are you here?
Shouldn't I have come?
No, it's not that. Where's Tim?
He said he was going out to eat with friends and left a while ago. I had received no such message. The problem was, this was the first time I was alone with my mother-in-law. Ever since hearing about her relationship with my father-in-law, I had been wary of her.
Let's not stand around talking here.
Come in.
Yes.
She acted as if it was her own house. Sitting across from her, I felt tense.
So, are you and Tim getting along?
Yes.
We don't have any problems. And when are you having kids?
Kids? You're always working, aren't you?
At this rate, you'll never have kids.
That's true. She continued to nag. It was as if my mother-in-law was venting all her stress on me. And after she was satisfied, she left. Then, as if passing ships, Tim came home. I'm home.
Welcome back. I need to talk to you right away. Oh, okay.
After changing, Tim came back.
What's the talk about? It's about your mom. Why didn't you tell me? I was surprised too when she suddenly showed up. Plus, I didn't have much notice. So, what did she say? I just listened to your mom's complaints the whole time.
Sorry about that. And maybe Mom felt lonely after Dad died?
Really? But she was bad-mouthing your dad too. Maybe she just wanted someone to talk to.
I could have tolerated that alone. However, since our house and my mother-in-law's place weren't too far apart, she started coming over all the time. That's when the real nightmare began. Less than a week later, my mother-in-law showed up again. It was my day off, but this meant I couldn't relax even on my supposed break.
I'm just gonna borrow Tim for a bit. Are you going somewhere?
Never mind that. We'll be off then. With that, the two of them left. What bothered me was that Tim didn't say anything about it. Anyway, I decided to catch up on the household chores I couldn't do during the work week. They didn't return until the evening. We're back.
Today, I took Tim out for some fancy French cuisine. Is that so? Wished you would have joined.
I wasn't so petty as to sulk over something like that.
No, I had things to do as well. Really? You're not upset?
She tried to provoke me, but I didn't take the bait. Then Tim came to my rescue.
Mom, that's enough. Isn't it about time you headed home?
Oh, is it that late already?
Well, I guess I'll be leaving then.
See you later, Ivy. After seeing my mother-in-law off, I let out a big sigh. Sorry about today. Couldn't help around the house.
It's okay. I could manage on my own.
I thought spending a little time with her would make her happy.
She disliked your dad, but maybe she just misses having someone to argue with? I'll tell her not to come over for a while. Thank you.
I felt relieved to have someone so dependable. After that, my mother-in-law stopped coming over unannounced, and we could live in peace. Our interactions were limited to occasional family gatherings, and life was peaceful. I turned 30 and we were blessed with the child we had longed for. I believed this would make us even happier.
Mom says she wants to help you out, Ivy. What do you think? She means to take care of me?
It was about 10 weeks into my pregnancy.
Probably.
I was really torn. I didn't want to deal with my mother-in-law, but morning sickness was getting worse, so the offer did have its merits.
What should I do? I'll support you as much as I can.
That decided it for me.
Then, let's accept her offer. Okay. I'll let Mom know.
A week later, my mother-in-law arrived. And she brought a lot of stuff with her.
What's with all the baggage? Well, I'm going to be taking care of you, so I'll need to stay here for a while.
I had assumed she would be coming over as needed. I immediately checked with my husband.
What does this mean? Is your mom planning to stay here? I didn't know about this either. For now, let's just go with what my mom says. Make sure you're there to back me up if something happens. Yeah, I get it.
I was doubtful he truly understood, but I had to trust his word. And so, the three of us started living together.
I'll be using this room. Wait a minute, that's my room.
I had secured a room to use as an office when we moved into this house. My mother-in-law demanded that room. It's fine, isn't it?
I have important documents in there, so that's not possible.
For the night, she slept in the room we had intended for the baby. But when I came home from work the next day, all the office stuff was in the hallway.
What are you doing?
You wouldn't listen, so I had to take action.
This is unacceptable.
As we argued, Tim just happened to come home.
What are you doing? Your mom cleared out the entire study room. Say something to her.
Then, my husband said something unbelievable.
We owe a lot to Mom. Can't you just let her have one room?
From that moment, my suspicion towards my husband grew. I had told him numerous times to ensure his mother didn't do things like this. Fine. You can use that room as you please.
You should have said that from the start.
The cohabitation with my mother-in-law continued until I gave birth. I decided not to bother with her anymore, thinking it was a waste of time. After giving birth to our daughter Holly, my mother-in-law finally left the house. I thought I could finally focus on raising my child without her interference. Though she did visit occasionally, my husband acted as a barrier, keeping her in check.
Finally got it. Now that Holly is here, even if Mom visits, it won't be like before.
Can I really trust you this time?
Of course.
He kept his word and protected me. Holly grew quickly, and before we knew it, she was a middle schooler. We're moving to my parents' house tomorrow. It was the day before Holly's birthday.
What? Tomorrow is Holly's birthday.
So what? It's already been decided.
Why all of a sudden?
You know why? I had no idea. Looking back, I couldn't think of any reason. We were forced to move to my in-laws' house against my will. The husband who used to stand by me was no longer there. Before I knew it, he took his mother's side, and his attitude towards me hardened. You've always looked down on me.
What? How did you come to that conclusion?
Mom told me. Obviously, you work at a better company.
I've never done such a thing.
You've been hiding it, haven't you? After that, my husband refused to talk to me. And watching all this, my mother-in-law just laughed. What a pity.
What have you been telling him?
Nothing special. Just that Ivy looks down on you. Didn't think he'd believe it to this extent.
I've never thought that, not even once.
Maybe Tim always felt inferior, knowing his wife earns more. It was true I earned more than him, but he knew that before we got married. I didn't think that alone would change how he felt. So, my mother-in-law must have said something else.
Did you say anything else?
Smart of you to catch on.
So, what was it?
Recently, you've been meeting with a man, haven't you?
A man?
I realized there must be some misunderstanding.
Are you talking about my brother?
Your brother? Don't bother lying.
It's not a lie.
I showed her a family photo. It was understandable for her to be mistaken. Since my brother was overseas, there were hardly any chances for them to meet.
Is this the person you saw?
Maybe it was him. I'm old, you know. She must have wanted to insinuate that I was having an affair.
What's your aim by doing this?
Aim? It's obvious. Because it's fun.
That's absurd.
There's nothing wrong with it. I'm old and don't have much time left. Might as well live as I please. Honestly, I thought she was mad. Using her son to play such games was beyond reason. Also, Holly has doubts about you. You better clear things up quickly.
To involve your own granddaughter in this.
You have no allies now. Entertain me more. She left those words behind and went back to her room. That night, I asked my husband and daughter to come to the living room to tell them the truth. What do you want at this hour? I want to sleep. It'll be quick. About what Mom said? That topic? Just to be clear, I haven't done anything Mom accused me of. Are you talking about the affair?
That's my brother. He just came back here, and we met up.
Holly silently listened to our conversation. Do you really expect me to believe that now?
Then ask my brother yourself.
If you just tell him to match his story with yours, it'll all work out, won't it?
You don't believe me.
Who would believe such nonsense? What a waste of time. Be prepared. My husband headed to the bedroom, leaving me and my daughter alone. As I slumped on the sofa, my daughter spoke up. I believe you, Mom. Holly. If I look at how you've been, I can tell you're not lying. Thank you for believing in me. Just hearing that made me incredibly happy. But the turmoil with my husband and mother-in-law was far from over. As soon as I arrived at the in-laws, the harassment from my mother-in-law began. From now on, you'll follow my instructions. You're in a position to be grateful. I didn't respond. Apparently, that triggered her. Not replying is disrespectful. You'll clean until I say you're done today. Saying so, she left with my husband and daughter to celebrate the birthday. Left alone, I cleaned the house furiously to vent my frustration. They returned late at night. Both my husband and mother-in-law ignored me. But my daughter spoke to me. Mom. I didn't say it earlier, but happy birthday. Did you have fun? Yeah. Then that's good. But I'm okay, Holly. Don't worry too much about me. I tried to reassure her, but I wasn't satisfied. I attempted to talk to Tim before bed, but he wouldn't engage. I'm tired. Let me sleep. Can't you at least listen? I have to get up early tomorrow. Don't disturb my sleep. Just a minute. I shook him, lying beside me. But he angrily shrugged me off without looking at me. Despite my attempts to keep talking, he didn't respond. Giving up, I went to sleep. After we started living together, the harassment wasn't just when Holly wasn't looking, it became blatant. Stress from work and home accumulated, and my health started to decline. Mom, are you okay? Maybe you should rest a bit. Thanks. But I have to keep going here.
Should I talk to Dad and Grandma? I can't put you in that position, Holly. But if something happens to you, I'm fine. If I really can't handle it, I'll rest, okay?
Holly was the only one concerned about me. Tim and my mother-in-law seemed indifferent to my health. Instead, they seemed to push me further. One morning, I overslept unusually.
Hey, how long are you going to sleep?
Tim kicked the bed. Sorry. I'm not feeling well.
That's not my problem. Get up and make breakfast.
Just give me a moment.
Hurry up.
He tried to drag me out of bed. I'm getting up. Despite feeling headache and feverish, I got up to prepare breakfast.
Finally up, huh? Don't dawdle and get ready quickly. We're running out of time, hurry up.
I decided it was better to follow orders than to argue back. I quickly made breakfast and set the table. By then, I was at my limit.
All this time, and this is all you could make?
I had prepared scrambled eggs, soup, and bread.
What is this? Serving such a lazy meal, what were you thinking?
My mother-in-law sighed. Tim joined in her criticism.
Really, just like Mom said. This isn't fit to eat. Then let's have you remake it.
Hearing those words, I felt my consciousness fading.
Not even able to prepare a decent meal. This is the problem with people who can only work. Don't just stand there, get moving.
I collapsed right there. Just then, my daughter woke up.
Mom!
After hearing her voice, I completely lost consciousness. When I woke up next, I was lying in a hospital bed.
Where am I? You're in the hospital. We called an ambulance. Holly called for me? Yeah. I told you not to push yourself too hard.
My daughter was worried but also angry. Sorry. And those two? She seemed hesitant to answer.
They were here until they found out it was overwork. Then they left.
I see.
It's just wrong. Only Mom ends up like this.
I've been targeted for a while.
Can't we do something? It'll only get worse.
We can't continue like this. I stayed in the hospital for about 2 days. Leaving the hospital, I pondered what to do next. Continuing as we were, something like this might happen again. So, I thought of reducing the stress a little. There wasn't much I could do about my husband and mother-in-law immediately. That left my job. Perhaps quitting was the only option. Fortunately, my company was looking for early retirees due to the economic downturn. I was 45 this year. I've been with the company for over 20 years. Still of working age. Yet, I chose early retirement.
I've decided to quit my job.
What?
Why are you making decisions on your own?
You say that?
Who do you think caused all this? Plus, you'll be happy I quit my job, right?
What?
Well, I might have been earning more before, but now you'll be the main breadwinner.
Well, that's true.
Now that you're in a superior position, it's not a bad thing, right?
Tim seemed a bit smug. He was satisfied with me being beneath him. This was exactly what I was aiming for. There was something I absolutely could not let them find out. The existence of my severance pay. If they found out, it wouldn't end well. So, I decided to keep it a secret.
Now that you've quit your job, you'll take care of everything at home.
Okay.
Oh, being cooperative now. Now that I'll have more time.
Since then, focusing solely on household chores, my health began to improve. I could endure that much. And then, as I came home from shopping and opened the door.
Finally back, huh, you witch.
What? My husband came running from the back and said that. I couldn't believe he would say such a thing, even though we're married.
You really fooled me, didn't you? I don't understand what you mean.
Anyone would react that way if suddenly confronted with such a claim. Then, my husband showed me something.
Well, you'll understand if you see this, right?
What he was holding was a small box. Inside was a note of bank information hidden with $400,000 of severance pay. Moreover, it was supposed to be locked so it wouldn't be found.
Why do you have that? I don't need to tell you that. But hiding it like this.
He laughed at me as if mocking me. He must have searched for it while I was away.
Taking it without permission is just like being a thief. What are you talking about? Your money is our marital property. I'm free to do whatever I want with it, right? Don't joke with me. I gave your severance pay of $400,000 to my mom.
No complaints, right? If you refuse, it's divorce. Then my mother-in-law came.
Your money will be put to good use by us.
You'll regret this, I'm sure.
What? That should be your line. You don't have the guts to divorce anyway. Just like Mom said. Without a job, you can't even live properly after divorce, can you?
It was a mystery how they could think that way. Of course, I had no intention of giving even a penny to my oppressive mother-in-law. But here, I had an idea.
If that's what you want, go ahead.
Yeah, I will.
In that case, let's get a divorce. I was planning on that anyway. Right, Mom?
Yes, of course.
We don't need someone useless in this house. Then I have one condition. Holly will stay with me. Do whatever you want.
There was no need for pleasantries with a husband who would treat his own daughter that way.
Then, I'll prepare the divorce papers immediately.
Of course. The next day, I got the divorce papers and drafted another contract.
Before submitting the divorce papers, could you sign this first?
What's this?
It's a pledge regarding our divorce. If you sign this, I won't claim any of your property. It's in your interest, right?
Really?
Of course.
Fine, I'll sign it. And so, my husband signed the divorce papers. Then I explained the situation to my daughter.
That's why we need to prepare to leave immediately.
Understood. My daughter didn't question it. Maybe she had sensed something like this would happen. We left the in-laws' house with our belongings. For the time being, we headed to my parents' house.
Sorry for this sudden situation. Don't worry about it. That house was never comfortable anyway. I doubt my parents' house will be like that. It's been a while, so I'm looking forward to it.
I proceeded with divorce right away. A month after we returned to my parents' house. It seemed my ex-husband and his family had been recklessly spending on houses, trips, and more during this time. But I wouldn't hand over money that easily. Tim and his family hadn't realized something crucial. Sure enough, Tim called when he noticed.
Hey! What's this about? There's only 7 cents left.
That was to be expected. I had plotted my revenge on them shortly after our divorce.
Did you really think you'd get $400,000? What are you saying? Where did all that money go? Did you spend it?
What?
Of course not. I'm not like you guys. Lucky for me you're foolish. Don't mess around. Explain properly. You can't withdraw with someone else's bank book anyway. I moved it to another account just in case.
Tim fell silent.
And you've been spending quite lavishly, haven't you? How will you pay for that? Were you counting on the $400,000? Wait, but I have a right to property division. If I exercise that. That's not possible. Why not? Because you signed the pledge before we divorced, remember? Was that for this moment? Well, noticing now is too late.
Tim was fuming over the phone.
I won't let this end here. Feel free to struggle. And say hi to your mom for me. I owe her a lot. Damn it! Do your best to pay off your debts.
Bye. I hung up the phone. I've never felt such a sense of schadenfreude. Perhaps my heart had been hardened by their actions. I thought they should struggle for the rest of their lives.
Mom, were you arguing with Dad just now?
That's right.
What was it about? Oh, just some stuff about assets.
If Tim hadn't done unnecessary things, he wouldn't be chased by unpayable debts now. Nothing could be done at this point. Later, a friend who informed me about their reckless spending brought new information.
It seems they've borrowed money from various places. How much did they spend? I don't know the exact amount, but it's easily over 8 figures. Then it can't be helped. By the way, he even asked me for a loan.
Tim, out of desperation, had even resorted to shady lenders. It's as if their lives are practically over. It seems the relationship with my mother-in-law has hit rock bottom. They're blaming each other every day. My mother-in-law must have been fully counting on that $400,000, so she probably has no savings left.
Again? You must have heard about us, right?
Well, yeah.
So?
No, that's not going to happen.
I haven't even said anything yet.
It's obvious, isn't it? Money, right?
Just pay it back little by little.
Then I could hear Tim and my mother-in-law arguing over the phone. After a while, my mother-in-law took the phone.
It's been a while. I don't really have anything to talk about. This is all your fault, isn't it?
No, this is entirely on you.
Can't you help us out?
That's impossible.
I never had any intention of helping you. You're the worst, you know that? Pot calling the kettle black.
Afterwards, Tim seems to be working from morning till night. My mother-in-law tried to work too, but having been a housewife for so long, she apparently can't manage a job satisfactorily. It's nothing but just deserts. They can continue living buried in debt for all I care. Meanwhile, my daughter and I are enjoying our freedom. Using my severance pay, I started investing in stocks using the knowledge from my previous job. From now on, we'll live a happy life together, just the two of us.